Part 262. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2621. Just because there are two little ones, Jia Yan feels that the process of wandering in the starry sky is not so lonely. It's even a little noisy and makes my head buzz. After all, these two little guys, except when sleeping, are noisy at other times, releasing the unique energy of children. Jia Yan was able to block out the sounds of external objects, but sometimes they made noises to him and always wanted to comment. Suddenly, Jia Yan's peaceful and beautiful life was disrupted. The spaceship was just like this, moving forward slowly in the narrow space. It seemed to be fast, but in fact, Jia Yan felt that it was too slow and gradually flew away from the planet. Are the stars here also so small? After flying over 50 million kilometers, Jia Yan began to feel that the brightness of stars in the distance had faded. He couldn't help but look at the dim star in the distance. In the outside world, even his true form did not dare to approach the star. At this time, in this world, it was just like a light bulb. Obviously, the size of the star has also changed, as if it only serves the outgoing star in the distance. The living beings in this world have long accepted the concept of a shining star serving a living star. Precisely because many things cannot be explained, the talk about the white god and the black god is rampant. Countless living beings believe that this world was created by man. Well, they guessed it right. Just because they believed this matter, the religious forces were extremely exaggerated. The history of many planets is a history of religion, especially the dispute between the white god sect and the black sect. It is the main theme of almost any planet, and why Wei has the majority in this world because of the power of the white god, resulting in the black god sect is in a rather weak position in the world. Jia Yan and the others were flying midway, and Jia Yan took the opportunity to observe the stars and power distribution in the starry sky. Hundreds of millions of kilometers directly in front of them, there is a planet about the same size as Jia Yan's home planet. There are countless life forms on it, and they are living in unparalleled prosperity. The prosperity of this planet is just a superficial phenomenon. Move quickly. You lowly servant. Yes, Lord God, I will move now. A man in a white robe drives a ragged woman to work hard. Even though she was skinny, this woman didn't get any sympathy. Occasionally, passers-by would pass by and pinch their noses, thinking that the woman smelled bad, but they would not show any sympathy at all. Without exception, the passers-by who passed by them were all wearing white clothes, but the patterns on the clothes were slightly different from the so-called divine master of the woman. You damn Ho Yi, who believes in evil, have no respect for living in the world. You can only survive because of the help of me, the chief priest of the god. If you don't work hard, see how I will hand you over to the heresy council. No, Lord God, we will work hard. When the woman heard about the heresy council, her expression suddenly changed, and she immediately begged the God Lord. Stop talking, what if you stop your hands? Work quickly. Yes, yes. The woman continued her actions. The God Lord looked at her with a big belly, then satisfied with the woman's obedience, waved his sleeves and left from afar. As the God Lord left, a sparkling look appeared in the woman's eyes. At the same time, not far away from the woman, another girl who could only crawl on her knees cautiously crawled to her feet. How are the preparations going? Humph, we're almost ready. These hateful Beijiao believers say we are evil, but they never wake up to themselves. They are the most evil people in the world. We're almost ready. Several of our people were reported last month and imprisoned in the heresy council. Presumably, they won't be able to get out. Speaking of this, the thin woman showed surprise in her eyes, and then said sadly, I hope they can have a good death. Being imprisoned in the heresy council is actually something more unbearable than death for these descendants of Xinhe who live a life worse than death. The so-called descendants of heretics kneeling on the ground were all women, not a single man. Because those who are descendants of heretics do not have the right to life. Women are allowed to be born and grow up because of their lack of strength and their usefulness. However, most of the male descendants of heretics are killed at birth. Even if they didn't die, their lives would be more miserable than those of female heretic descendants. They will definitely have a good death, and I believe that they can all go to another world and fall into the arms of Lord Kurakama. Speaking of the black god, the eyes of several women who heard it showed longing. In such difficult days, only faith can fill them with hope of living. Even the people of the white god sect turned a blind eye to this matter to a certain extent, because only the heretics who survived could be exploited by them. Wow, ha ha ha, I've flown so far, I've seen all the stars here, he he he. Adisha also has some credit for this design. This day has passed half a month without realizing it. Half a month is neither long nor short. At least during this period, Jia Yan felt that he had spent as long as the past few years. The two little guys, in the small spaceship, are basically two alarm clocks, and to some extent they are even more exaggerated than the alarm clock. They were originally allowed to practice, but the two of them have already broken through the level required by Jia Yan. They can't be allowed to break through another level. It will definitely be a big change. Therefore, Jia Yan could only endure their energetic troubles every day, or every moment. Sometimes the two would laugh and play games, then sometimes they would argue and cry, then break up and have conflicts, and then get back together in less than half an hour. Their every day was a big drama. Oh! It's almost half a month already. Our destination is almost here. After Jia Yan was reminded by Edisha, he looked at the distance and time, and immediately showed a sincere smile. God can see how pitiful he is, even he expressed great expectations for the planet he is about to arrive at. He's not looking forward to seeing anything new on the planet, he's just looking forward to not having to see these two little brats every day when he gets there. Call. In the sky, the spacecraft has accelerated to a point where it is not slowing down. Not long after, the spacecraft finally began to slow down gradually, and in front of the spacecraft, a blue planet appeared in their eyes. This planet is about the same size as the home planet that Jia Yan and the others walked out of. Of course, this is also a trick of the world creators. Adisa was gesticulating, saying that this planet also had her contribution, which made Jia Lin confused. But this did not prevent the two of them from standing at the window in amazement, carefully watching the huge planet that was gradually approaching. On the planet, unlike their home planet, there are many spaceships taking off. According to intelligence, this planet is a commercial distribution center for many planets in the four directions, and it is also a religious place. Every year, many aliens come here to participate in the Bashan sect's big event. Jia Yan calmly told the information he had obtained about this planet. Yeah? Believe in the Bashan cult. Adisha is so angry. Don't believe in Bai, believe in black. Believers in Bai are all bad guys. Adisha suddenly wanted to jump. She naturally knows the difference between the so-called letter black and letter white in this world. One believes in his master, and the other believes in the white dolphin, the enemy that the master will face next. How could Adisha accept this? Those who believe in evil are good people, and those who believe in white are bad people. Aditha had already arranged for the black god religion to be established in various countries on her home planet, and then even if she used bloody methods, she would make people believe in the black god. This is what they need to dispute in this world. Therefore, when she arrived at this so-called place of belief in Bashan cult, Adisha could not hide her disgust. I just heard that there are still believers in the black god religion here, but I don't know what the current situation of these people is. Jia Yan shook his head calmly. He naturally knows best where Adisha's anger comes from. It's just that he is not as angry as Adisa, because he knows best that this is how the world is played, otherwise there would be no reason for the two sides to fight. He can't sit down with the white dolphin and watch the king fight against the king in the starry sky, while the ordinary people of this world sit and watch the tiger fight, right? Why create a planet like this? It's better to just fight in the normal world. For them, wanting to be promoted here is actually a rather complicated process, and the competition between the two sides has already started since they first came to this world. Jia Yan doesn't know how prepared the white dolphins are, but he knows that he needs to change some parts of the planet from respecting the white dolphins to respecting himself first, so that when a war actually breaks out, both sides will have each other's trump cards. A communication is coming, accept it? Jia Yan looked at a communication request coming and answered it directly. Their spacecraft flew out from this planet. Only the identification code and so on had been eliminated by the scientists from the Xinhe country through special means and given a new false identity. Are you businessmen or pilgrims? We are businessmen. Jia Yan responded calmly to the sound of communication access. Well, please follow the map guidance I will send to you and arrive at the merchant entrance. I hope you can enjoy higher commercial services on my planet. The words were beautifully said. Jia Yan accepted the prompt from the beautiful woman's voice and then looked at the spacecraft computer. Sure enough, a map was sent. He followed the guidance on the map and entered the correct channel, and then dozens of spaceships or huge commercial spaceships came to them. There are so many spaceships, these spaceships are all capable of interstellar navigation. It's amazing. Jia Lin was at the window, almost stunned. After all, not everyone can witness the sight of dozens of spaceships lining up in person. This was the first time since she was born that she had seen such a scenery, which was full of a sense of science fiction. This is nothing. Edisha has seen many, much bigger spaceships. Edisha had an expression like, "You little girl, you don't know anything." But this expression was ignored by Jia Lin. She no longer believed in Atissa, because sometimes Atissa would lie to her miserably just to grab a snack from her. That's why she didn't believe that Atissa had really seen more spaceships and bigger spaceships. But she didn't know that Atissa only said two words a lot, which was simply being modest. The battleships and spaceships that Aditha had seen in the alien sky before were dozens of kilometers in size, compared to the spaceships that were less than 1 kilometer in size in front of her. They were simply out of place. The number is even more so. The appearance of dozens of warships and hundreds of thousands of warships dispatched at every turn from the outside world is simply child's play. Jia Yan looked at Adisha calmly. I just feel that this little fart Hai's Hineo is probably dumbfounded now. Who told you to lie to my sister all the time? Now that you tell the truth, no one will believe you. What is this called? This is crying wolf. It's just a few hundred words short. I hope everyone can subscribe to the official version and refresh it in half an hour. Food, and cheating her was miserable. That's why she didn't believe that Atissa had really seen more spaceships and bigger spaceships. But she didn't know that Adisha only said two words a lot, which was simply being modest. The battleships and spaceships that Aditha had seen in the alien sky before were dozens of kilometers in size, compared to the spaceships that were less than 1 kilometer in size in front of her. They were simply out of place. The number is even more so. The appearance of dozens of warships and hundreds of thousands of warships dispatched at every turn from the outside world is simply child's play. Jia Yan looked at Adisha calmly. I just feel that this little fart Hai's Hineo is probably dumbfounded now. Who told you to lie to my sister all the time? Now that you tell the truth, no one will believe you. What is this called? This is crying wolf. It's just a few hundred words short. I hope everyone can subscribe to the official version and refresh it in half an hour. Food, and cheating her was miserable. That's why she didn't believe that Atissa had really seen more spaceships and bigger spaceships. But she didn't know that Adisha only said two words a lot, which was simply being modest. The battleships and spaceships that Aditha had seen in the alien sky before were dozens of kilometers in size, compared to the spaceships that were less than 1 kilometer in size in front of her, they were simply out of place. The number is even more so. The appearance of dozens of warships and hundreds of thousands of warships dispatched at every turn from the outside world is simply child's play. Jia Yan looked at Adisha calmly. I just feel that this little fart Hai's Hineo is probably dumbfounded now. Who told you to lie to my sister all the time? Now that you tell the truth, no one will believe you. What is this called? This is Crying Wolf. It's just a few hundred words short. I hope everyone can subscribe to the official version and refresh it in half an hour. There are only a few hundred words left. I hope everyone can subscribe to the official version and refresh it in half an hour. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2622. The latest website name, AU Pavilion. The latest website address. Is this planet? Xin Shen planet. It is said that this planet originally wanted to register Xinbei Shen star, but how could they use Xin Bai Shen star? There was already a powerful civilization using it, so they could only settle for the next best thing and use the name Xin Shen star. At a certain port of call, a large number of various spaceships and merchant ships were docked. Jia Yan and Aditha Jialin listened to everyone's conversations but could not hear any information. Wow, this planet is called Xin Shen planet. No matter what Adisha heard, she would make a fuss. Do you believe in the White God sect? Then we are here. Jialin felt a little uncomfortable. The Black God is a standard country that believes in the Black God, and it is now promoting the Black God religion on the entire planet. As a person who believes in the Black God, she naturally has a good impression of the Black God. I can't talk about belief, but I definitely think that the God of death should be the Black God. Now that she is on this planet that belongs entirely to the power of Xinbei God, it is normal for her to feel uncomfortable. No wonder the workers I saw near the port just now were all wearing white divine robes. Fortunately, because this planet has good trade, it is not as conservative as expected. There are people coming and going on the street. It seems that many of them are wearing Xinbei God's robes, but most of them are still in casual clothes. When Jia Yan and the others walked on the street, except for their different styles of clothing, which made locals couldn't help but take a second look, they were not very eye-catching. Just because they are inconspicuous does not mean that no one is looking at them. These must be outsiders. Hey, I'll go up and ask them what their beliefs are. On the side of the road, a rather arrogant man walked up to Jia Yan and the others with a smile and blocked their way forward. You three, I am a local in this area. I was wondering if you would like to find a guide. No need. Jia Yan shook his head. Don't be like this, our port city is very big. This is one of the several large external ports on our planet. If you hire me, you can not only take you to understand the city, but also take you to various places in our country. Doing things locally will save a lot of trouble. The man said sweetly. While speaking, he also looked at the three young people in front of him. Let's not talk about Adisha. A simple little devil may not be as high as her belly button even when she stands on tiptoes. Jialin is also quite immature, probably no more than 15 years old. The only boy among the three who looked a bit like an adult was only 15 or 16 years old, and his face was extremely young. Of course, this young man gives the impression that he has been in a high position for a long time, and his demeanor are not comparable to those of ordinary teenagers. But it's just a role like this. The young man showed even more satisfaction after seeing the faces of Jia Yan and the three of them up close. We don't need it, thank you. Jia Yan shook his head coldly. If this person is pestering, maybe he will take action. Jia Yan just doesn't want to cause trouble, but he is definitely not afraid of it. If he really needs to take action, he will never be afraid of anything. Even if he demolishes the planet, it will only attract stronger enemies, but it may not attract the attention of the white dolphins and others. Because they are just like us, I am afraid they are still just entering this world, and when they start to carry out the most basic work, they cannot stretch their hands so long. Snort. The young man's expression turned sinister, but the expression only passed away briefly. As a person who has been doing this kind of work all year round, how could he show any irrational behavior just because of a little stinginess? He changed his expression. Haha, it's okay if you don't need to, but I would like to ask, do you believe in the white god? What the hell, we don't believe that ghost. Adisha jumped up and down, wanting to fight with this young man in the street. You know, she and her master came to this world to fight with the white dolphins and the others, so how could she believe in him? The young man showed a slight smile calmly. Then he was startled in pretending to be surprised, and then hurriedly shushed. Guys, you can't say this loudly, especially you little kid. Childish words will not work on our planet. If someone hears what you said, they will just send you to the religious law enforcement department, so be careful. Jia Yan knew that the young man in front of him must have some conspiracy, but until now, it seemed that there was nothing wrong with him, so he couldn't hit the smiling man. Okay, friend, we understand, please make way, we are leaving. Jia Yan said calmly. Okay, I'll get out of the way, but you must not say it again. Goodbye. When he said goodbye, a unique brilliance flashed in this young man's eyes. Brother, is there something weird about this person? Jia Lin asked quietly after being dozens of meters away. Jia Yan said in his heart, you little girl, you are indeed older than Adisha and quite sensible. He nodded, don't worry, it's just heresy. If he really dares to play tricks, he won't end well. Yes, I believe it. Jia Lin nodded. In her mind, her brother Jia Yan is omnipotent, at least it is impossible for him to be unable to deal with a gangster on a strange planet. The three of them continued walking, but Jia Yan soon discovered that the young man was following behind them furtively. His heart moved. He originally wanted to kill this young man in the alley, but after thinking about it, he thought that shouldn't be the case. Even if this person had any conspiracy, under his own strength, he would not be able to pull off the trick and continue. Let him follow. He just had a look at the dark side of the planet. Knowing yourself and your enemy is the key to winning the battle. Besides, if there is no conflict, how can he take action? You can't just go to the home of the strongest person like this. It would be too ugly and unethical. Maybe even if you occupy the planet, you won't gain much support from the people. Just as Jia Yan was thinking of a solution, Jia Lin suddenly exclaimed. Following her gaze, Jia Yan was slightly surprised for a moment. Because in front of them, there was a temple-like place, and on the lawn inside the temple, there was a circle of women in ragged clothes, kneeling on the ground. Some were doing housework, some were pulling weeds, and some were kneeling at the gate of the temple, welcoming believers who enter. What is this? Those women are so pitiful. Jia Lin's saint disease is a little bit worse. Every woman will have sympathy for the same sex, and many times they still don't distinguish between right and wrong, let alone such a miserable situation now. There must be something hidden. Let's go in and take a look. Anyway, it was still early. Jia Yan looked around and saw that there should be no big problem. He led the two girls directly into the so-called Zinbei God Temple. When entering the gate, two young and beautiful women kneeling beside the gate greeted them loudly, "Welcome, Lord God Disciple." God Disciple? A person who believes in God. Jia Yan shook his head and said, "I'm not a believer in the white God. I'm just here to watch." "Yes, we don't believe him," Edisha jumped up and down, leaving behind a string of childish words. The two women kneeling at the door suddenly raised their heads and looked at each other with a little worry on their faces. "First, sir," they called softly from behind. But Jia Yan ignored the voices of the two women and led Edisha and Jia Lin into the so-called Zinbei temple. There were two women kneeling at the gate of the temple, and there were several more after entering. Except when they could stand up when cleaning high places, they had to kneel at other times to clean, and they had to treat any ordinary person who entered the temple with utmost respect. Etiquette. The entrance seemed to see something disgusting, and a woman even kicked her away when she passed them. This person, Jia Yan, they had just met outside. She was gentle and elegant at the time. Jia Lin also said that this lady should be born noble. I didn't expect that after entering the Xinbei God temple, the kneeling women would be treated so evilly. The most horrifying thing is that the people around me think the scene is extremely normal. Many people even praise it, saying that the woman fights evil and has the aura of a god disciple. Now, not only Jia Lin frowned, but also Jia Yan frowned. On the other hand, Adisha, after being amazed, jumped up and down, as if everything had nothing to do with her. In terms of human nature, she is still not much different from a 5-year-old child. After all, she has no experience. Brother, these people who believe in the white god sect are crazy. Also, who are these women? Why do they seem, not treated as human beings? Jia Lin lifted Jia Yan's arm, seeming a little scared. The power of religion is sometimes so daunting, because whether God is God or not is another matter. The key is to use the so-called God to seduce countless people and make people regard wrong or bad things as it's a matter of course. All explanations can be justified by using the word God. At this time, Adisha did not follow the example of the adults around her and walked to her seat to sit down. Instead, after jumping around, he happened to pass by a little girl kneeling on the ground. This little girl is probably about 10 years old, right between the age of Adisha and Jia Lin. She was so skinny that a gust of wind could blow her over. After Adisha came to her side, the girl raised her head and looked at Adisha, who had a delicate face and was so cute that people couldn't help but pinch her cheek. A huge contrast bloomed between the two little girls, because the little girl had an ugly face and her clothes were in tatters. After just one glance, the little girl quickly lowered her head. She also wants to wear such nice clothes, she also wants to eat good food, and she also wants to gain weight. She even wanted to live longer, because half of the people who died in this temple recently were little girls under 10 years old, and she didn't know if she could survive to adulthood. Shayla. Sudden. A very harsh sound of peeling off a plastic bag came from the originally quiet temple. Many people turned their attention over. Then they saw that the delicate and cute little girl standing next to the evil descendant girl actually peeled off the candy wrapper in front of the evil descendant. Is this deliberately making future generations of evil people envious? This little girl is pretty good at it. By the way, she is really cute. The adults around looked at this innocent scene with smiles on their faces. For girls from ordinary families, their hearts are filled with quite ordinary feelings, such as praising the beauty of children. But the next moment, the candy was peeled off the wrapper and suddenly stretched out in front of the kneeling little girl. Adisha said in a milky voice. For you to eat? Everyone present was frightened by what this little girl said. Little girl, don't give it to her. This kind of people don't deserve your mercy. Do you know that they are the descendants of evil believers? Several men and women frowned and shouted coldly. It is already a crime to show mercy to the descendants of the evil believer. Hey, but this is a few-year-old child. It cannot be said to be a crime. At most, he will be sent to a punishment center to be taught a lesson. If this was done by an adult, that would be a big problem. The little girl raised her head and looked at the clear-eyed Adisha with her big eyes. Then she quickly lowered her head and shook her head vigorously. I didn't even dare to look at the candy. She didn't even dare to answer. Adisha looked around, her face straightened up. Humph, get out of here, Adisha wants to feed her. Adisha knelt down and forced the candy in front of the girl's face. If you don't eat it, Adisha will throw it away. Aditha can be quite childish sometimes. The girl finally raised her head again, and then tremblingly took the candy in Aditha's hand. On the other side, a thin girl was kneeling on the sound, her face was bitter, she wanted to stop him but didn't know how to do it. A girl of about 10 years old, said to be a descendant of evil believers, actually knows nothing, but has lived such an inferior life since she can remember. Now that someone is giving charity to her and treating her well, she thinks in an ignorant way. Acceptable. But as everyone knows, this is a big mistake. Eat. Adisha smiled softly, regardless of the drastic change in the demeanor of the people around her. The little girl also smiled, put the candy in her mouth, and then her eyes were blank. A line of tears rolled down from her eyes. This was the first time in her life that she had eaten such a delicious snack, how could she not burst into tears? Isn't it delicious? Adisha didn't understand. Her snacks are quite delicious. They are said to be the most delicious snacks on the planet of Xinhe. They were originally sold out, but as the chief of general staff, she used her personal rights to snatch them away. Phew, that's a lot of money to take home. The girl shook her head desperately, pursed her lips and smiled. That's good. Adisha was very happy that there was someone who liked the same taste as her. You little bastard who sympathizes with black believers. Next to them, the men and women who were sitting on chairs and waiting to pray felt like they saw something filthy, and each one of them spoke harshly to each other. Click. At this time, outside the temple gate, the gangster-like man who had been following Jia Yan and the others for a long time rushed in from outside. He knew that now was his chance. So his face looked ecstatic. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2623. Sincere Lord, I want to expose these three people. They are all believers in the evil God. Not only that, they were cursing our God on the street just now, and now they are even sympathizing with the descendants of the believers in the evil God. I have reason to believe, these three people are operating in our country with a purpose. The gangster pointed at Jia Yan and Adisha Jiolin. Wow! The people around them once again took a few steps away from Jia Yan and the three of them, with a look of surprise on their faces. Are these three teenagers believers in evil gods? There are not many believers. Many of the outside businessmen who come to their planet believe in the black god. But when it comes to cursing my god, that's a big problem. In addition, the little girl sympathized with the evil god and wanted to give her food. Moreover, the matter was still in the Xinbei god temple, which was tantamount to desecrating the god. Sure enough, they blasphemed the gods and even cursed our gods. They must have come to our country with a purpose. It is simply unreasonable. These three seemingly innocent and cute children could have such ulterior evil purposes. They should be punished as slaves. Everyone around him was pointing, and everyone was indifferent and ruthless. The gangster smiled and looked at the three children at the same time. As a person who lives on the streets, he knows that the three children are not ordinary people, but so what? As long as you enter their planet, as long as you are a blasphemer, even big families from other planets are useless. I remember that last time an alien prince was arrested in their country for similar crimes. The prince had to bleed profusely before he escaped from the planet in despair. The point is not how to escape, nor what punishment this planet has for evil blasphemers. The point is, as long as such a person is caught, no matter what the price the other party pays, the person caught and identified will be generously rewarded. There must be some background behind these three little brats. If you identify them, how much reward will you get in the future? It's really exciting. This was his purpose, precisely to identify these three children. After identifying them in public, he would be rewarded accordingly depending on how severely the three were punished. He has done similar things many times. Although the temple is strict in some matters, the temple is really trustworthy in this kind of matter, so he believes in it. So that's it? Jia Yan sat on the chair. When he heard this, he knew why. It turns out that this little gangster had such an idea. Very good. Suddenly, in front of the temple hall, an elderly man wearing a white robe walked out. God Lord! Everyone was respectful to the old man. Jia Yan looked at him and was surprised that this planet was indeed stronger than the one he was born in. Even a small temple god had heaven-level strength. But that's all. If a heaven-level person had to make Jia Yan stand up and worship in person, then it would be too humiliating for him to be a domain lord. You identify the person who insulted the gods, and the gods will reward you. The God Lord looked at the gangster calmly. As someone who has cooperated many times, how could he not know what this gangster wanted? After that, he continued to look at Jia Yan and the other two people coldly. As for you three believers in the evil god, follow me now. You will determine your crimes after torture and examination. Several men who seemed to be temple guards walked into the temple wearing the temple's unique battle armor and stood in front of Jia Yan and the others. Get up and go. A few people didn't let Jia Yan and the others crawl on the ground, but they believed that it wouldn't be long before these believers in the evil god who couldn't be considered human would do the same thing as those girls. Jia Lin was a little nervous. She knew that among the people present, her strength was probably second only to Jia Yan and Edisha, but the atmosphere made her a little nervous. Brother Jia Lin secretly turned her gaze to Jia Yan. Jia Yan, as if he had not heard what the Lord God said at all, calmly stood up from his chair, turned around and looked around. The guards in the temple held their breath and did not rush, because they seemed to read a little danger from Jia Yan's expression. Is this the so-called Xinbei temple? Jia Yan looked at the beautiful architectural forms around him, and then at the believers who were watching the three of them with expressions such as watching a show, joking, angry, shameless, etc. What is it, so what is it not? The Lord of God frowned and shouted coldly. Yes, then, demolish this place. Jia Yan also shook his head, as if his own temper was aroused by this guy's temper. Buzz. A burst of power was released from Jia Yan's palm. Puff. A pillar was shot into two pieces, and the whole temple was shaken and almost collapsed. Xiaolin, Adisha, let's do it. Let's play your favorite game of taking things apart today. We don't like playing demolition games. Jia Lin retorted, but a force was released from her palm, and with a rumble, a wall collapsed. Adisha lifted the little girl from the ground, who was shocked by the scene before her, and stuffed the candy into her little mouth. This. You rebelled against it? You rebelled against it and actually attacked the temple. Kill them directly. No matter what their identities are, these three children will not survive what happened today. The Lord God felt his scalp numb and angry, which almost made him explode. It has been many years since the Xinbei God sect took control of the main authority on the entire planet. No one dared to cause trouble in the Xinbei God sect's temple. Unexpectedly, he saw it today. Moreover, these three children are so bold that they use their own power to bomb the Xinbei temple. This is already a much more serious matter than desecrating the gods. Damn it, stop it. The few temple guards around Jia Yan probably didn't expect that anyone would dare to attack such a sacred place of Xinbei temple and just scream. They also had power gathered in their bodies, and then burst out various weapons towards Jia Yan. There are all kinds of weapons, including swords, guns, and sticks, but without exception, these weapons have the powerful power of the White God. Jia Yan chuckled. What kind of power is it? I've felt it several times in Xinbei country. Jia Yan didn't care at all whether there was anything valuable in the so-called Xinbei temple. He casually hit the bodies of several guards, causing them to fall to the ground, and then bombarded them with energy. No, stop. The face of the God Lord with heavenly power has become increasingly ugly. He knew that as the divine master of this temple, if he did not stop these guys from wreaking havoc, his position as the divine master would be over. So he lifted up his robe himself, and his whole body turned into a ray of light, splashing towards Jiayan. The Lord God took action himself. Since I believed in my God, the God has not taken action for more than 10 years. I don't know if it still has the same glory as when it became a famous city. The strength of this divine master obviously cannot be underestimated, at least to the locals. His attack power was slightly stronger than Jiayan imagined. Heaven-level strength, plus some weird powers that vaguely assist him, make his combat effectiveness a small level higher, roughly like the middle level of heaven level. But the primary level of heaven and the intermediate level of heaven are probably the same for Jiayan. Jiayan opened his 5 palms, ready to slap this awesome and coaxing God Lord down, but before that happened. Bad guy, Edisha will beat you up. A petite figure jumped into the air before Jiayan could make a move, and struck the divine master on the chin with a small pink fist. She was like an angry little leopard, shouting with a milky voice, and lifted the Lord high into the sky. The man broke open the ceiling of the temple, and then flew high into the sky. He disappeared in the blink of an eye. He probably flew several kilometers away, and he would definitely be dead when he landed. Jiayan looked at Edisha in surprise. Then he realized something. It turned out that the little girl who was being held up by Edisha had broken knees and could not stand upright at all. She had to hold onto a chair to stand upright. It was obvious that she had not stood properly for a long time. It would be pitiful for anyone who saw it. It's just that Jiayan was a little surprised. Can Edisha have such a temper? This is the first time he has seen her. Humph, little sister, your knee is broken. How can you play with Edisha? You're so bad. Edisha will beat you to death. Edisha pretended to jump up again, preparing to rush over and chase the Lord of God. Edisha, this person is dead. You can't hit him even if you chase him. Jiayan stopped behind Edisha. Ah! Are you dead? Alas, Edisha hit her too hard. It's not fun to die so soon. Edisha seemed quite unhappy that this seemingly awesome and coaxing god was killed by her with just one punch. It was so careless. At the edge of the battle were the women kneeling on the ground. Almost all of them are young and beautiful little girls. As a temple, it is impossible to have the offspring of older and less beautiful evil believers. As for where the older ones went, only those people themselves know. They were all stunned, looking at the entire destroyed temple. The collapsed fragments, as well as the murals, glass, and everything beautiful, are like shackles that strengthen them, and they are breaking bit by bit. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, the skinny girl who had made eye contact with the little girl eating candy sat up straight on the ground, stopped kneeling, and just sat there and laughed mechanically. Smiling, tears fell from the corners of his eyes. She just felt that the place that had imprisoned them for so long, like a nightmare for them, was so vulnerable. In the hands of 3 children who may not be as old as her, it was as easy as paper and was directly defeated, and large areas of buildings fell to the ground. When the seemingly beautiful building cracked and collapsed, it was like a large number of black shackles peeling off their bodies. The place they had been running away from all their lives was so fragile. Several girls were completely stunned, and the 2 kneeling girls who came in to greet the guests were also stunned. The so-called believers screamed and fled from the temple when the explosion and the battle began. At this critical moment, it seemed that their faith did not give them the courage to fight. In other words, on this planet, people only have habitual beliefs and do not sincerely believe in Bashan religion. Normally it is beneficial, and their faith is fine, but if they are required to throw their lives and blood, then I'm sorry, but I'm not sensitive. The ridiculous battle started very quickly and ended very quickly. Jiayan just stayed put and calmly fought with the temple guards with one hand, but with a snap of his fingers, he easily killed a few of them with good strength. The others, except for Edisha who punched the God Lord away, all fell into Jiolin's hands. Puff! Jiolin punched again, then turned around and kicked again. She already has Earth-level mid-level strength. In the eyes of this group of temple guards, the mid-level strength of the Earth level is not much different from theirs. The two sides can be said to have a lot of contacts. If you make good use of the numerical advantage, might still have the possibility of winning. But the problem is, Jia Yan, who knocked away the heavenly god master with one punch and looked at the battle scene with one hand behind his back, these two seemingly more unfathomable children. They knew that this time the temple was in trouble. I'm sorry for spilling my blood. Thank you for your insensitivity. The ridiculous battle started very quickly and ended very quickly. Jia Yan just stayed put and calmly fought with the temple guards with one hand, but with a snap of his fingers, he easily killed a few of them with good strength. The others, except for Edisha who punched the God Lord away, all fell into Jiolin's hands. Puff! Jiolin punched again, then turned around and kicked again. She already has Earth-level mid-level strength. In the eyes of these temple guards, the Earth-level mid-level strength is not much different from them. The two sides can be said to have a lot of contacts. If they make good use of their numerical advantage, they may still have the possibility of victory. But the problem is, Jia Yan, who knocked away the heavenly god master with one punch and looked at the battle scene with one hand behind his back, these two seemingly more unfathomable children. They knew that this time the temple was in trouble. I'm sorry for spilling my blood. Thank you for your insensitivity. The ridiculous battle started very quickly and ended very quickly. Jia Yan just stayed put and calmly fought with the temple guards with one hand, but with a snap of his fingers, he easily killed a few of them with good strength. The others, except for Edisha who punched the God Lord away, all fell into Jiolin's hands. Puff! Jiolin punched again, then turned around and kicked again. She already has Earth-level mid-level strength. In the eyes of these temple guards, the Earth-level mid-level strength is not much different from them. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2624. Editha raised her small fist and punched a guard so hard that he flew out of the wall and collapsed a large number of houses. Just because of the knee. The remaining escorts who could speak were imaginable. What we did to the descendants of these evil people was far more than that, but the words came to my lips and I swallowed them. They suspected that after saying this, they might lead to more terrifying attacks. They are afraid. You all stand up. The little girl with shriveled knees heard a male voice that was in the process of changing its voice, but it was very nice. She raised her head and took a look, and her eyes suddenly seemed to see something shocking. This is the face of a young man. But the boy's face is more than just a boy. From her mind came the thought of being frightened and wanting to worship. You know, even if this girl worships everything, there is almost nothing that makes her sincere. Now, an instinctive thought came from her mind that made her sincerely worship him. Don't kneel. The young man discovered her intention and shouted coldly. But after finishing the drink, the young man smacked his chin and said, "Interesting, you seem to vaguely recognize me." Of course Jia Yan was curious. Among these girls, there was something in their hearts that made him feel close to them. Especially the 10-year-old girl with a damaged knee in front of him and the skinny girl kneeling in the distance, these two gave Jia Yan the strongest feeling. While Jia Yan was looking at the little girl, Edisha had already killed most of the guards with great force. From an outsider's perspective, this scene is terrifying. It can even be said that many people may not be able to accept it. Because this little 5-year-old girl, under the siege of a group of adults, used her body, which was less than the height of the adult's navel, to hit the enemy with her small fists, slaps, or short legs, causing a thunderous impact. There was a big movement, and then the guards were cut off one by one. If you tell me, no one will believe it. On the other side, Jialin, who was entangled with the remaining guards, performed much weaker. But this so-called weakness is on a par with Adisha. If she were an ordinary girl, her performance would be amazing. With the body of a little girl of 12 or 13 years old, she burst out with jaw-dropping fighting power, and used weird fighting skills from time to suppress the guards. Although there were several crises, it seemed to her that her potential had been developed to an unprecedented extent in this battle. Her combat power gradually increased, and the danger was relieved a lot. No. Adisha is the most disgusting. Aditha had finished fighting the last guard, and the entire temple was riddled with holes and crumbling. She walked to the chair, jumped on it, then propped up her chin, sat with her legs swaying, and critically observed the fight between Jialin and a guard. The person Jialin fought against was the second leader of the guard, who was also the deputy leader. His fighting ability was definitely much worse than that of the god lord that Adisha had just beaten away, but among the guards, he was considered a good player, probably a high-ranking Earth-level player. Combat power up and down. Jialin, on the other hand, is only at the mid-level Earth level, and the strength gap between the two sides is quite obvious. Wow, Jialin, you are so useless, you can't even beat this kind of person. Adisha poured cold water on her. Humph, Jialin stretched out her small fist and made a frightening collision with her opponent. Both of them took a few steps back. Adisha, don't stand there and talk without hurting your back. Believe it or not, you have suppressed me to the middle level of the earth. You are weaker than me. Don't believe it? Adisha, let's try it. Adisha was so angry that she stretched her short legs and stood up. Adisha, let her fight on her own. Jia Yan glanced at Adisha sideways. Does this little brat think there are too few things to do? Xiaolin fights an enemy who is not much different from her. This is a training to make her stronger. If you, a monster at the venerable level, go up and fight against her, what will you gain? Really ignorant. After being glared at by Jia Yan, Adisha curled her lips and sat down obediently. Jia Yan did not look at the scene of Jialin fighting with the deputy commander, but continued to look back at the silent little girl and the other women. There is no chance of an accident in Jialin's battle. Even if she loses her hand, he is still with her. If he can still cause Jialin to have an accident in such a close situation, then he can give up this body and commit suicide tomorrow. Forget it. Your injury is very serious. How about you call them all over and I will treat you? Jia Yan seemed like a strange uncle who seduced the little girl, and said to the little girl in front of him. The little girl had clearly spoken before, but when she looked at Jia Yan, she cherished her words like gold and did not dare to say anything. She didn't dare to kneel down because Jia Yan asked her to stand. My lord, she is still young. Please let me help you if you have anything. The skinny girl stepped forward and spoke in a sweet girlish voice that was very different from the jagged body. Jia Yan was a little surprised and looked at the little girl who was the only one who didn't show any fear. But when she looked over, the other party still dodged, which showed that her heart was not as stable as she appeared. Okay, you can bring them here. Don't worry, I don't mean any harm. Jia Yan ordered to go down. Yes. The girl automatically entered the role of a servant, turned around, and limped towards the girls who were huddled in the corner, or crawling to escape from the battlefield. Not long after, I don't know what method the girl used to make all the women present come to Jia Yan. Half of them were able to stand up unsteadily, and the other half couldn't even stand straight, so they just knelt and came to Jia Yan's side. There were about 13 or 14 people in total, and each one was no more than 21 or 12 years old. The youngest is the 10-year-old girl in front of Jia Yan. Although they all have very similar faces, one thing is the same, that is, they are all skinny. Even the fattest one only has a little flesh on his cheeks. The rest are all jagged and have high cheekbones. To be cherished. Don't worry, I'm not a bad person. Now let me ask you, do you want to leave this place? If you do, tell me and I will heal your wounds. Jia Yan said calmly. I'm willing to go with you. The skinny girl who was the boldest was the first to raise her hand. I'll go too, this gentleman is a good man. One or two girls present raised their hands, and one of them couldn't even raise her hand high, which showed how weak she was. It would not be surprising if he died tomorrow. Jia Yan returned to the chair and stretched out his hand to Adisha, who was watching Jia Lin's battle attentively. Take out the bag. Huh? No. It's Adisha's. Adisha was startled for a moment, and then she covered the small cartoon bag she was carrying behind her back. These young ladies are hungry. If you don't give them something to eat, they will starve to death, Jia Yan said directly without explaining too much. Adisha looked at the dozens of pairs of innocent big eyes following Jia Yan. She didn't know what their mentality was. She nodded mysteriously and took the small bag. So good. Jia Yan smiled and touched Adisha's little head. Yeah. Adisha is very good, Adisha also smiled happily. Opening the zipper, Jia Yan stuffed Adisha into his backpack and delivered the top delicacies brought from another planet to the hands of these little girls. You eat first, and when we get outside, I will take you to eat better food. In addition, your injuries will be taken care of for you now, he said, handing out all the food one by one. The little girls were trembling when they took the food. Since when have they not eaten proper food? In the temple, they had no normal experience except during working hours, and the food they ate was just coarse food that was no different from pig food. Even when the price of coarse grains increased greatly, they ate mukin and many people died. Delicious. The little girl who spoke more politely yelled loudly after eating a piece of bread. Well, Adisha also thinks it's delicious. You're great, Adisha shouted happily, but seeing her food reserves being quickly divided by so many people, she frowned in distress. Come. She wiped the drool from her mouth. Thank you. The talkative little girl said to Jia Yan. Jia Yan had already squatted down and carefully observed their legs and feet. What are you doing? The girl asked curiously. Wait. Jia Yan went to the girl and found that her legs and feet were in the best condition, but her body was also covered in bruises. She must have made a lot of efforts to stand up. He moved his palms to the girl's knees. Well. The girl was in such pain that even her food fell to the ground. Groan. A faint black aura was released from Jia Yan's palm covering the little girl. As she was stunned, she felt that the atrophic muscles in her legs were filling up little by little, and then the deformation and wear on her knees gradually returned to normal. Ah! You, what did you do? The girl screamed in amazement. Try to take a walk, Jia Yan raised his head and said with a smile. The girl tentatively stepped forward, and then found to her ecstasy that her shaky legs were full of strength. This is the energy that young talents should have. Haha, my legs are like ordinary people. The girl was excited and jumping up and down. Aditha was also affected by the emotion, jumped down from the chair, took the little girl's hands, and jumped with her. What are you doing? Jia Yan looked back and saw that the youngest girl, who was 10 years old, was kneeling on the ground again, picking up the snacks that the previous little girl had dropped on the ground and stuffing them into her mouth. She raised her head, her sparkling clear eyes reflecting Jia Yan's figure. This kind of food is not good for your health. Don't eat it in the future. The little girl nodded in confusion. Jia Yan came to her and found that the little girl's bone deformation was much more serious than the one before. He didn't know how she insisted on standing up just now. Jia Yan put his palms on the girl's knees. Before Jia Yan could make a move, the girl jumping with Adisha noticed the scene here and rushed forward. Can you heal someone else first, so as not to cause her too much pain? This girl is very concerned about the little girl in front of her. Jia Yan had long noticed that the girl was already caring about the little girl when she was kneeling on the bed and being fed candy by Edisha. Tell me your reasons. Is there any difference if I treat her first or treat someone else first? Jia Yan raised his head calmly and looked at the girl. The thin girl met Jia Yan's gaze, unaware that she looked like a master in front of her. Interesting. She's afraid of pain. Can you practice with someone else first? The girl pointed at the little girl and said. She is your sister? No. Then what does she have to do with you? The girl hesitated. With a few hundred words left, come to Cheateon.com to subscribe to the official version, and then refresh it in half an hour and it will be the official chapter. Well. The girl was in so much pain that even her food fell to the ground. Groan. A faint black aura was released from Jia Yan's palm covering the little girl. As she was stunned, she felt that the atrophic muscles in her legs were filling up little by little, and then the deformation and wear on her knees gradually returned to normal. Ah! You, what did you do? The girl screamed in amazement. Try to take a walk. Jia Yan raised his head and said with a smile. The girl tentatively stepped forward, and then found to her ecstasy that her shaky legs were full of strength. This is the energy that young talents should have. Haha, my legs are like ordinary people. The girl was excited and jumping up and down. Editha was also affected by the emotion, jumped down from the chair, took the little girl's hands, and jumped with her. What are you doing? Jia Yan turned around and saw that the youngest girl, who was 10 years old, was kneeling on the ground again, picking up the snacks that the previous little girl had dropped on the ground and stuffing them into her mouth. She raised her head, her sparkling clear eyes reflecting Jia Yan's figure. This kind of food is not good for your health. Don't eat it in the future. The little girl nodded in confusion. Jia Yan came to her and found that the little girl's bone deformation was much more serious than the one before. He didn't know how she insisted on standing up just now. Jia Yan put his palms on the girl's knees. Before Jia Yan could make a move, the girl jumping with Edisha noticed the scene here and rushed forward. Can you heal someone else first, so as not to cause her too much pain? This girl is very concerned about the little girl in front of her. Jia Yan had long noticed that the girl was already caring about the little girl when she was kneeling on the bed and being fed candy by Edisha. Tell me your reasons. Is there any difference if I treat her first or treat someone else first? Jia Yan raised his head calmly and looked at the girl. The thin girl met Jia Yan's gaze, unaware that she looked like a master in front of her. She is your sister. Please remember the first domain name of this book. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2625. Just one was enough, and each subsequent one could hold back from complaining about pain, which surprised Jia Yan. How much pain do they have to endure in order to endure the pain of reconnecting a broken bone? Finally it was the little girl's turn. Be patient, don't let this young lady worry about you again. Jia Yan said with a smile. The little girl seemed to be making a sound for the first time. Jia Yan put his palms on the little girl's knees, and then activated his energy. His energy belongs to the black divine power, or in other words, it is the purest black divine power. To people in this world, there is almost no big difference between Jia Yan's power and that of the white dolphin, except for the color. The almighty power equivalent to the gods. It can be used for healing, fighting, defense, or forging, etc. So it was up to him to personally treat injuries and other injuries, just like playing. Don't forget, even if a dead person is dead, Jia Yan can find a way to rescue him from the underworld. Of course, that's another story, and it requires the soul of the deceased to go to the underworld. If he doesn't go, he can't help. Buzz buzz. This little girl surprised Jia Yan even more. When the other little girls were being treated by Jia Yan, even the bravest one couldn't help but make a sound of pain. But this little girl, who was about 10 years old, did not make a sound during the whole process. If her little brows were not tangled, no one might think that she felt pain. Okay, try taking a few steps. Jia Yan let go of his hand and asked her to move. The little girl walked away as she was told, with a look of joy on her face. He, it's fun, you all get up. At some point, Adisha had cleared away the people around her and was walking on the edge of the group of girls with a smile to watch. Although there are all teenage girls here, she is only 5 years old and still not grown up. She is obviously several heads shorter than others in the crowd, like a little carrot head. However, none of these girls dared to look down on Adisha. Seeing that she was actually talking next to them, they quickly made way for her to walk into the crowd. At this moment, many girls who were concentrating on being treated realized that the fighting outside had stopped. They couldn't help but look outside, and then their breathing became rapid. Stunned. I saw police officers, strong men who served the White God sect, and some mysterious masters fell in the outside world. There are about 30 or so of these people. If they unite, they can destroy small forces. But here, he was defeated to the ground by a humble-looking little girl. All eyes immediately turned to Adisha, who returned to Jia Yan with a smile. Admiration, surprise, and gratitude were all intertwined in their eyes. Although Adisha didn't see it, she could feel it. I'm afraid she also has many emotions growing inside her. Everything is the process of Adisha learning how to become a human. She was reborn as a living body because she originally wanted to get closer to real life. Now she is wrapped in various emotions, and she is always surrounded by, learning and understanding are ongoing. Hello, play with me from now on. Adisha walked up to the youngest girl, pointed at her, and said in an orderly manner. The little girl nodded. Wow, Adisha has a new friend, Jiolin has no new friends. Jiolin was unhappy now. You don't have any new friends. I do, she nodded. These people are my new friends. Can you all treat me as my friends? The girls all around nodded mechanically. Nonsense, how dare they say no to a little girl who saved them and has such terrifying fighting ability. Besides, judging from this little girl's temper and behavior, I'm afraid there would be no harm in becoming friends with her. Crazy. Too crazy. This is an attack on our country. At this time, there was another noise outside the door. It turns out that a new enemy has come outside the temple. And this time it was the temple guards and people dressed as the God Lord who came to support from another temple. It was the dresser of the God Lord who spoke. His whole body was trembling with anger, and he pointed at the destroyed temple, as if he was suffering from epilepsy, completely in disbelief. Naturally, he couldn't believe it. Who dared to take action against the temple in this country and on this planet? This is the bottom line of the Zinbatian section. Even if it is a war between countries, the defeated people will escape to the Zinbatian sect's temple, and the enemy's army will not dare to attack, because it will lead to a crazy counter-attack by the Zinbatian sect. On this planet, the Batian sect is the true sole ruler, and the existence of the country is just a tool they use. And now, one of the layers of the uncrowned king has been destroyed. How could he not be angry? Oh? Are you crazy? Jia Yan pushed aside the girls and walked toward the temple gate. The entire temple was already crumbling. Under Jiolin's wave, all the girls behind him followed the brothers and sisters anxiously. Their already paralyzed hearts finally seemed to see some light at this time. No matter how stupid the girl was, she knew that she could only follow these young people at this time. Otherwise, if they are caught again after being rescued, they will only die. As for whether they can escape the capture of the Batian sect, they have left it to their fate. Not to mention that these young people are relatively young. Even if the big shots come, they probably don't believe that there are people on this planet who can escape the pursuit of the Batian sect. What they do is just to let themselves live longer. but being able to act freely and speak with their heads held high has already brought tears to their eyes. Boom! At this moment, when all the girls' thoughts were flowing in their hearts, an earth-shattering explosion sounded from the door of the hall in front. When everyone looked around, they saw a spectacular scene taking place. A young man put his hands behind his back and looked at the hundreds of people in front of him. A black energy exploded, covering everything in sight, whether it was enemies, buildings, or people. Bombing and destruction. This sound swept the entire city. The earth shook. The group of girls behind him were completely stunned. Then, there was an extremely strong excitement in their hearts. Even the little girl, who had always had a dull expression, now looked moved, and there was an exciting emotion that reverberated deep in their already numb hearts. Can escape. This young man's fighting ability is so terrifying. As long as they have this young man's help, they might be able to escape. Endless emotions came one after another, making the girl's eyes wet with tears again. However, their many emotions may not matter to the people in front of them. Even if it was known, even Jialin, the most normal of the three young people, would roll her eyes. You guys have so many inner dramas. That's right, these three teenagers, who had seen many joys and sorrows during the war, were no longer so easily shaken. Even Jialin was the same. But even if they are hard-hearted, it does not prevent them from feeling angry and sympathetic to the girl's plight. Jia Yan, such a terrifying master, was so angry that he took action himself, let alone Jialin and Edisha. Despite her carelessness, Edisha knew a lot of things. She was willing to take action before and even gave her snacks, which showed that she was also a little unhappy. The earth-shattering explosion lasted for about 20 seconds, and the shock wave rolled over, overturning and knocking down large areas of land and buildings. The horror of the crowd has never ceased. All the shocks never stopped, and even the smartest girls couldn't describe their current shock. In their eyes, the extremely noble Lord God and the Guardians turned into gas just by being swept by the light from their eyes. The ordinary people they used to kneel down to greet even had no time to scream. Directly destroyed into the most elementary particles. The god who scolded Jia Yan for being arrogant might no longer be able to say such arrogant words if he were still alive. Because those with strength have rampant capital. In an instant, dozens of seconds passed. The world in front of them made everyone present completely stunned. All Jia Yan could see were horrifying ruins. All areas within about 200 meters in front of the temple were destroyed, houses collapsed, and there were heavy casualties. Scream, shout, cry. Various sounds came from all directions, creating a scene of a catastrophic disaster. But no one could have imagined that the creator of the scene was actually a young man of 15 or 16 years old. The most daring girl finally turned her gaze to the young man who stopped looking and continued to walk forward with his hands behind his back, and then quickly retracted his gaze. Because from the current point of view, this man who is unscrupulous and releases black energy has a sense of awe and grandeur that makes them believe in black people. If there is a black god in the world, this is probably the black god. Even if not, he must be the envoy of the black god, coming to save us who believe in the black one. Thinking of this brave girl couldn't help but hold the palm of the 10-year-old girl next to her, looked at the girl who was looking over, and nodded quietly. The city has long been a mess. Even if the city is huge, if the area of 200 meters is completely destroyed, such a movement is definitely enough to wake up the entire city. Everyone looked at the billowing smoke and dust, wondering what happened to this shocking explosion. Countless people were stammering and confused, not knowing what was going on. There are other strong people who suddenly changed their expressions after sensing the power of this area, either asking for information from other parties, or leaping over with ugly expressions. In short, the whole city became chaotic because of Jia Yan's eye attack. But Jia Yan remained unmoved. Walking towards the heart-stopping scene of destruction, behind her was Edisha, who was also expressionless, even a little smiling. After that, it was Jialin who led a group of little girls. She was just the right size to blend in with this group of girls. Although she was not as old as most of the girls in this group, these girls were malnourished and half of them were not as tall as Jialin. The spectacular sight of destruction made passers-by breathless. Many passers-by who had watched the whole process were silent and stared stiffly at Jia Yan, who was leading the girls out. Then they looked at him again and calmly led the girls out into the alley. On the ground filled with smoke and dust, broken walls occasionally rolled down to the ground, but the person in charge had already bypassed this place and left towards a safe place. "Oh, this is a clothing store. You go in and pick out clothes. Be quick." Walking past a clothing store that was not affected by the shockwave, but the glass and most of the equipment were destroyed by the shockwave, Jia Yan pointed inside and let the girls go in to make a selection. The owner of the store had been knocked unconscious by the shockwave, and the girls were reluctant to enter. "Go in. From now on, if you want to enter a store like this, you can enter at any time. If anyone doesn't let you in, you'll beat him. Don't worry, I have my brother behind you." Jialin, as Jia Yan's most satisfied little bitch now, what she said made Jia Yan agree with her very much. It's good to have a sister who understands her brother, and said what she wanted to say. Under Jialin's urging, these girls who had never entered a serious clothing store finally filed in. They saw it every day, but only dared to dream about it, and never thought about it. Entering the clothing store. There are still a few hundred words left. Come to cheateon.com and subscribe. Refresh in half an hour and you will see this chapter. The world in front of them made everyone present completely stunned. All Jia Yan could see were horrifying ruins. All areas within about 200 meters in front of the temple were destroyed, houses collapsed, and there were heavy casualties. Scream, shout, cry. Various sounds came from all directions, creating a scene of a catastrophic disaster. But no one can imagine that the creator of the scene is actually a young man of 15 or 16 years old. The most daring girl finally turned her gaze to the young man, who stopped looking and continued to walk forward with his hands behind his back, and then quickly retracted his gaze. Because from the current point of view, this man who is unscrupulous and releases black energy has a sense of awe and grandeur that makes them believe in black people. If there is a black god in the world, this is probably the black god. Even if not, he must be the envoy of the black god, coming to save us who believe in the black one. Thinking of this brave girl couldn't help but hold the palm of the 10-year-old girl next to her, looked at the girl who was looking over, and nodded quietly. The city has long been a mess. Even if the city is huge, if the area of 200 meters is completely destroyed, such a movement is definitely enough to wake up the entire city. Everyone looked at the billowing smoke and dust, wondering what happened to this shocking explosion. Countless people were stammering and confused, not knowing what was going on. There are other strong people who feel this. Please remember the first domain name of this book. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2626. A group of little girls walked out of the store. Editha took the lead and walked at the front. Okay, she'll just skip it. This little kid was wearing a little dinosaur suit that he found somewhere in a store. His tail swayed when he walked. He was extremely cute, but he didn't look like a girl. She was still proud of herself, thinking she was the most beautiful. The girls behind them are eye-catching. Not everyone is beautiful, but it is precisely because of the contrast with the tattered clothes that it gives people a sense of contrast. And among them, most of them do have appearance marks. In other words, the temple kept them probably because of their appearance. They put on ordinary girls' clothes, but they look stunning. As for Jialin, she changed into a lonely one. She was wearing ordinary clothes before, and now she is still wearing ordinary clothes. They are not stunning, and they are not as cute as the dinosaur clothes that Aditya wore. Is Adisha the prettiest? Adisha jumped up to Jiayan, blinking her big eyes expectantly and asked. Yes, you are the best looking. Jiayan nodded. Adisha suddenly jumped up with joy. You are also very good. You can always wear ordinary people's clothes in the future. Then Jiayan looked at the girls who followed him. Thank you, sir. The girls were on the verge of tears. If they were rescued before, they were still a little numb inside. Now they have changed into ordinary people's clothes and simply washed themselves in a clothing store. They really have a new look and a bright future. Suddenly, when everyone looked at Jiayan and the others, they felt that they had met the greatest good people in the world, and that this might be an opportunity for them and others to be reborn. Do you think Adisha is pretty? While the conversation was going on here, Adisha had already twisted the tail of her dinosaur suit and walked to the onlookers on the other side. Oh no, it should be said to be the vigilant ones. Each of them was so frightened that they took half a step back. Because in the intelligence they received, they all saw the picture of Adisha using her delicate little fists to kill many masters with one punch. Several of them are even heaven-level masters. How dare they treat such a little girl as an ordinary girl? Looks great. A man who was stared directly at by Adisha swallowed and spoke hesitantly. Okay, Adisha said, I'm the best looking. Jialin, you still laugh at me. Adisha ran back to Jialin and bossed her around. That's because they are afraid of you. Are you saying that on purpose? Fortunately, you are still the chief of general staff. People can't see through this. Jialin kept a distance from Adisha as if she was disgusted. She didn't want to stand with such a childish brat. Impossible. You must be envious of Adisha for being praised. I don't believe it. Jialin is the worst. Okay, I'm the worst. Anyway, don't slow down, we have to go. Jialin said helplessly. Jiayan nodded and looked at Adisha, who was jumping up and down, with a slightly amused expression. Indeed, we should go, otherwise the strongest man in the city should appear. He has already felt that in the city, which is not even a small town, there is an aura that only belongs to the venerable level. Now this breath is ready to move. Although Jiayan is not afraid of any venerable level powerhouses, for him, it is the time when he has just entered this planet and he does not want to provoke such a powerful man. Yeah, let's go. Adisha's face changed as she ran forward, took the arm of the 10-year-old girl, and pulled her along. He said he was walking, but in fact he didn't really leave with his legs. Otherwise, these ordinary little girls might not be able to leave this urban area even if they walk on their newly restored normal legs. Jiayan just led them to the main road, waving his arms, and everyone flew into the sky. The girls screamed and screamed, but Aditya was laughing and laughing, which was very different from their expressions. Everyone below saw a glimpse of the crowd that was still in the sky just now and disappeared. Jiayan used the teleport skill possessed by his body. In other words, it is something similar to subspace, except that subspace does not exist in this world. What it borrows is the gap in the world and the transfer of execution. Ah! All the girls were screaming in fright, even the boldest girl. Jialin, on the other hand, has become accustomed to it. She had experienced Jiayan taking her to transfer several times, and now that she saw it again, she felt that the girls around her were so ignorant, and she cried out. Adisha was even more exaggerated than she was, pointing at the pale-faced girls and laughing, looking like heartless little dinosaurs in dinosaur suits. But this transfer process did not last long. Buzz. When everyone appeared again, they appeared in a place where birds were singing and flowers were fragrant. Hey, where is this? Adisha was the first to make a sound of surprise and uncertainty. She thought she would return to the spaceship and take them away with her. This is a small mountain village not far from the port city. I just found out about this place from the map. Look over there, that's where we are going to go later. Not far from the port city. Jia Yan's answer, they didn't care about mountain villages or anything like that, but when the mountains were not far from the port city, all the girls' expressions changed drastically. They were worried that if they were very close to the port city, it wouldn't be long before they would be arrested by people from the city again. Because no matter what, the temple was destroyed and a small neighborhood was destroyed. It was impossible for this country to let it go. Don't worry, I said it's not far away, but it's not as far as you think. This place has left the previous country and is now a small country. Jia Yan took out his brain, clicked on the map of the planet on the screen, and pointed at the country where they had just stopped, which was a big country on this planet. Jia Yan also pointed out where they were now, and saw that it was a small city-state. Not to mention the big cities, there were only 6 or 7 small cities. It could be said that it was a gap between big countries. Hearing this, the girls present breathed a long sigh of relief. Even though they have been imprisoned since childhood, they still know a certain amount of knowledge, that is, every country has its own power. Even if the big country is very strong, it is very difficult to send people to the small country next door to arrest people. Of course, what's more important is that they probably don't know that they and others have traveled here. From now on, you have several choices. Jia Yan quickly stopped talking about whether they would be arrested, but seriously talked about their choice. First, you can choose to follow me. No matter what I ask you to do in the future, you must execute it. Second, that is to part ways from now on. You will find your own way to live here. You have the marks of the so-called descendants of black god believers, but I have removed these marks, so as long as you do not express your beliefs, you will still it's possible to live peacefully. You can think of these two options yourself. The words Jia Yan said gave these girls considerable respect. Otherwise, he could just be a hands-off shopkeeper and leave directly with Edisha and Jialin. Anyway, he has done his best. In fact, he asked these girls to make a choice because they might be of some use. There is also an extremely obscure thought. That is, he believes that he cannot control these two little live treasures, Edisha and Jialin. Instead of letting them harass him from time to time, it is better to find a group of friends for them, so that they will disturb him less. Of course, the most important point is that if he wants to do tricks on this planet, he will also need some trustworthy people. These people who believe in him are probably quite good choices. Sir, we choose to follow you. I also choose to follow you. Our lives were saved by your majesty. Whenever you are asked by your majesty, we will do it. These girls all looked quite loyal, and they all wanted to kneel down. Jia Yan just shook his head and felt a terrifying force lift them up, making them unable to kneel down. Since you are willing to follow me, let's first make a 3-part agreement. Jia Yan looked at the timid dozen girls. The first point is that you no longer have to kneel down and worship anyone casually in the future. Except for your parents, if you continue to kneel down and worship casually, I will drive her away. The second point is that your philosophy from now on is to make yourself brave. I know this is difficult, but I don't need a bunch of obsequious trash. The third point is that you have to practice with me. I don't know whether you can become a strong person in the future, but at least it will give you strength and make it easier to do things for me. Do you understand the above 3 points? Jia Yan's words shocked the hearts of all the girls present. Did they hear it wrong? It's just that Jia Yan didn't let them kneel down. But you require them to be brave, and are you willing to teach them how to practice? Does this mean that pie is falling from the sky? The little girl who had been silent all this time now had an inexplicable brilliance in her eyes, and her colorless eyes were slightly watery. She was the first to nod unexpectedly. We understand, thank you, sir. This voice is very similar to that of Edisha, quite childish, but there are many differences, as if it has been through many vicissitudes of life, contradictory to each other. We also understand. The girls nodded. Adisha also understands. Aditya is joining in the fun. Jia Yan rolled his eyes at her, thinking that his decision was too right. If Adisha was allowed to have more contact with him, the sense of distance would disappear, and her naughty nature would be used on him, and then she would have a headache. If you want to maintain dignity in front of your subordinates, you need an appropriate sense of distance. Especially this little kid. After losing her wits, Jia Yan found that she seemed to be gradually getting out of his control and turning into a bad kid. Okay, first I'll give you a task. Play with the two of them while I look for a place to live. Yes. The girls also thought what a difficult task Jia Yan was going to give them. A few of them were still looking around at the bare ground and climbing into the mountain buildings, wondering if Jia Yan was thinking of letting them build houses on the spot. But I didn't expect it to be such a simple task. Taking care of children? Looking at the little naughty guy who was wearing a dinosaur suit, he picked up a 10-year-old girl and taught her various games. The girls suddenly felt that this task was not that easy to accomplish. Just an ordinary little girl. But these two girls, who seemed younger than most of them, had previously killed many city masters in front of them. How dare they take care of it? Jia Yan, on the other hand, ignored the inner thoughts of these girls and went to the village. The village should be a small Shanla village that has not had much contact with outsiders for a long time. When they saw someone from outside the village, they immediately stretched out their necks and looked at Jia Yan strangely. In particular, the strange clothes he wore made the villagers wearing the robes of the Bashan cult point their fingers. Find bookstore. What do you know? This is called fashion. Aren't there a lot of clothes like this on TV? But TV is TV, wouldn't it be disrespectful to God to dress like this? Old stubborn, I won't tell you anymore, this is called the trend of the times, okay? The people in the village are not completely ignorant. After all, this planet is a technological planet that can already travel among the stars. There are as many ways as you want to receive external information. Jia Yan wore clothes from his home planet and walked calmly on the street. A woman was observing a young man who was walking forward with his hands behind his back. Suddenly, the young man turned his attention to her. Taking care of children? Looking at the little naughty guy who was wearing a dinosaur suit, he picked up a 10-year-old girl and taught her various games. The girls suddenly felt that this task was not that easy to accomplish. Just an ordinary little girl. But these two girls, who seemed younger than most of them, had previously killed many city masters in front of them. How dare they take care of it? Jia Yan, on the other hand, ignored the inner thoughts of these girls and went to the village. The village should be a small Shanla village that has not had much contact with outsiders for a long time. When they saw someone from outside the village, they immediately stretched out their necks and looked at Jia Yan strangely. In particular, the strange clothes he wore made the villagers wearing the robes of the Bashan cult point their fingers. What do you know? This is called fashion. Aren't there a lot of clothes like this on TV? But TV is TV, wouldn't it be disrespectful to God to dress like this? Old stubborn, I won't tell you anymore, this is called the trend of the times, okay? The people in the village don't know anything at all. After all, this planet can already reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2627. The house that the old village chief called was actually an ancient castle that looked like a huge castle. In other words, it's the castle. It is said that this castle was built by the great nobles who were enfeoffed here in Gudain, but it has been abandoned for about 300 years. It was once used as a museum, but due to its remote location, it was quickly abandoned because no one cared about it. For the same reason, rich people and others were unwilling to take over such a remote castle, and the place was gradually abandoned. To put it bluntly, Except for water and electricity, there is almost nothing here. But no matter how worthless it is still a big castle. The rent is so expensive that you can buy a house in the village in about a month. Of course it is a small house. Jia Yan believes that renting that kind of house would not be convenient for a large group of girls. Money is not a problem, it's just here, but I need people in the village to help me clean it. The sooner the better, it's best if I can simply check in today. Jia Yan smiled, which made the village chief who was about to bargain with Jia Yan cough again, and he couldn't bear it in one breath. You little brat. Really rent it? Original price? The village chief almost said, little brother, you can still cut my price. I'm worried about renting it out. It's best to cut it to 1/3 of my bid, so that I can feel more at ease. Unexpectedly, Jia Yan, as if he didn't know he was being tricked, waved his hand and ordered everyone to get ready. His time is not used for bargaining. To these ordinary living beings, he has truly lived a dream life of financial freedom. To him, these small extraneous things are like nothing. In this way, the whole village was boiling instantly. They all thought that a group of young but wealthy young people had come to their village. And it was a young man and a bunch of little girls. This boy is really good at playing, but he is rich and elegant, and he has so many birds, which makes sense. Jia Yan didn't know that people in the village chewed his tongue so much. If he knew. Even if I know it, I won't be angry, just sighing and finding it funny. So, under the temptation of money, many villagers took matters into their own hands and went to the castle not far outside the village to start the cleaning process. It is said that everyone gathered firewood and the flames were high. It didn't take long for this castle, which didn't look too big, to be cleaned out of a few rooms. The roads were also simply repaired, and it was barely enough for cars and horses to pass. The next work will come again next time. Jia Yan and the girls moved into this castle. For a moment, all the girls from the temple felt like they were living in a dream. The big castle, a life without worries about food and clothing, and the beautiful pastoral scenery, for them, this is a wonderful life that they have never imagined in their dreams. Can people still live like this? This lord can also teleport. Who is he? In addition to Master Jia Yan, little sister Edisha is also extraordinary. She can deal with a group of strong men above the heaven level by herself. Even when there was no one around, the girls were chatting and talking about today's magical encounters. When they got up in the morning, they were still under the threat of the temple's god master. They didn't know whether they would be humiliated again today and whether their lives would be in danger. But in the blink of an eye, in the evening, they had actually lived in a quite luxurious castle in an exotic countryside thousands of kilometers away from the original city. Although the furniture was still somewhat lacking, it was not difficult to imagine what it would be like as long as the equipment was complete. Scenery. I don't even dare to dream of such a dream. But miraculously, it became a reality in one day. Among all the girls, the thin girl stood with the 10-year-old girl. I will protect you, don't be afraid. The skinny girl herself was only 16 or 17 years old, but she hugged the 10-year-old girl like a little adult. Ah, Edisha protects her. If you don't want to, she wants to play with me. Suddenly, Edisha's shouts came from beside the girl, which scared her and quickly took a step back. Ha ha ha, your strength is too weak, your talent is not even at the earth level, he, you are still protecting people like this. Editha pointed at her and laughed, then her eyes moved. She was not a fool. She knew that such a girl actually had extraordinary strength among this group of imprisoned girls, even though she was not at the prefectural level. She must have there is an inside story. But she didn't point it out either. Just like Jia Yan's mentality, it doesn't matter. Saving these girls is just a matter of taking advantage of the situation. It happens that there are evil people in the so-called temple who want to deal with Jia Yan and the others, So they can just bring them out. It happens that they are on this planet and they also need certain subordinates to do things. Adisha jumped up and walked away holding the 10-year-old girl. The thin girl opened her mouth, then pursed her lips, feeling helpless. Facing the wonderful sunset outside the window, she didn't know what to do for a while. Behind her, an ancient and unwavering figure walked out. You and that little girl have a close relationship, right? How about you? You didn't say it before, but you still won't say it now. Jia Yan seemed like a silent ghost, startling the girl. After she turned around, she came to her senses again, frowned, hesitated for a moment, and then nodded. She knew that her so-called secret might be nothing in the eyes of such a big shot who could change everything. Actually, I am the last descendant of the royal guard of the country where the white god cult was destroyed by the black god cult 100 years ago. As soon as she said those words, Jia Yan knew what was going on. Since it involves national security or something, it must be about loyalty and so on, a very old-fashioned plot. Sure enough, the girl pointed to the little girl being led by Edissa and said that she was the contemporary princess of that country, but times had changed. More than 100 years had passed, and the so-called princess back then was now just a joke. But she didn't think so. After she happened to know the identity of the little girl in the temple, she vowed to take her out of the temple. Even if no one would be loyal to the royal family 100 years ago, she regarded it as her life creed. People always need to have a creed in order to survive. People who have nothing may not be able to survive. At least she regarded this matter as a top priority, so she could endure the cruel life in the temple, and then she shared the little girl's suffering as much as possible. Even privately, she has contacted the descendants of female black believers in another temple who go to the temple where they are to communicate every month, and has come into contact with other resistance organizations. These women have united and formed brewing big things to do soon. But I didn't expect that before that, someone had already demolished the temple, and many powerful people in the city did not dare to fight back. Speaking of this, the skinny girl felt a little bitter. She glanced at Jia Yan secretly and said, "My lord, you don't know something. We are afraid of those who are worried. For you, I am afraid that I can kill them with just one hand. After seeing your bravery, I had the idea of being bored, because no matter what how weak people like us struggle is just a joke in front of the truly strong. It's not a joke." Jia Yan shook his head. The girl looked up at him dumbfounded. Although she was extremely bold among the group of obedient girls, her long-term training also made it difficult for her to dare to look at others. At this time, she actually dared to look up at Jia Yan, even if she just lowered her head again for a moment. It was very rare, which showed the surprise in her heart. Jia Yan is actually speaking for the weak. Everyone, or in other words, every life, is equal. For me, it is possible to kill the weak, but I will not despise any life. You have your way of living, I have my way of living. It is your misfortune to encounter the death of a strong person, but it does not mean that a strong person who casually kills the weak will be any more noble than you. Jia Yan's words were a bit difficult to pronounce. But every word is absolutely exquisite, making people have endless aftertaste. Many people regard weakness as the original sin. In fact, the saddest thing in life is not that others see you as weak, but that you look down on yourself and regard yourself as a weak, lowly person. This kind of life is the saddest. Because after living a lifetime of self-degradation, self-dwarfing, and self-denial, living is really meaningless. I think I understand. The girl was thoughtful. But Jia Yan took over and said, "I think you don't understand. Besides, even I can't see through all this. You believe what I say, just because I stand at a higher angle than you. With a high status, you will naturally have convincing power. So, do you want me to listen to it, or do you want me to listen to it?" The girl was a little confused. Jia Yan spoke in a roundabout way, and at the same time he was speaking to himself. But he has to make his purpose clear after all. Okay, I won't put too much pressure on you. The reason why I'm talking to you is this. He looked out the window at the beautiful dusk scenery, narrowed his gaze and focused it on the girl's eyes. I'm going to form a team of subordinates. Since you are the strongest among these girls, how about you be the initial captain? If you fail to pass the next assessment, I will replace the captain at any time. In addition, I will replace you as the captain at any time. I don't care if you want to help your master, whether it's to rebuild the country or take revenge, as long as you have this kind of strength, I will allow it. Ah! The girl was stunned, and then some kind of excitement emerged deep in her heart, so excited that her whole body trembled and her blood boiled. This was an instinct inherited from her royal guard ancestors. As a warrior, isn't it true that what you desire is to be strong and protect what you want to protect? I am willing. I will live up to your expectations. The girl knelt down on one knee, not both knees this time, because she knew that this was the orthodox warrior etiquette for worshipping. Jia Yan smiled slightly. From that day on, the residents of the entire village began to become more and more curious about the visitors in the castle. First of all, I am curious about how this team of young men and women are so rich. Later, it became clear that they went to rent a house in a remote area for what purpose. No one thought that these boys and girls would have any bad intentions, because their money was enough to bring down the entire village. And since they moved in, except for the girls who go shopping every day or find villagers to repair the eel castle, they have not interacted with outsiders at all. Just the day after renting the castle, the young man went out again and rented a hilltop very close to the castle from the village. In a short time, he surrounded the hilltop. It is said that he was against the enemy. Those girls train. In this world, practicing martial arts is normal. Even among the young people in the village, there are some who are powerful. So they didn't think about the worst, but were quite interested in how the people in the castle practiced. But unfortunately, the first few young people who wanted to explore the secrets of the castle were unexpectedly knocked out of the wall by a strange force when they sneaked into the outside of the castle. These outsiders are afraid of coming to Reborn. No one dares to spy on the young men and women in this castle anymore. Time passed quickly like this, and the people in the village gradually became accustomed to the existence of young people. Moreover, their appearance has not only improved the people's livelihood in the village, but also flowed a lot of money into the village, improving everyone's living standards. Those cute little girls have also become an alternative beauty in the village. Except for the first 1 or 2 weeks, many people couldn't help but feel heartache when they saw those skinny girls. They became plumper day by day, as if there was some super tonic in the castle, which soon made them look like girls of the same age, level, and every appearance is as beautiful as a flower. But unfortunately, the first few young people who wanted to explore the secrets of the castle were unexpectedly knocked out of the wall by a strange force when they sneaked into the outside of the castle. These outsiders are afraid of coming to Reborn. No one dares to spy on the young men and women in this castle anymore. Time passed quickly like this, and the people in the village gradually got used to the existence of young people. Moreover, their appearance has not only improved the people's livelihood in the village, but also flowed a lot of money into the village, improving everyone's living standards. Those cute little girls have also become an alternative beauty in the village. Except for the first 1 or 2 weeks, many people couldn't help but feel heartache when they saw those skinny girls. They became plumper day by day, as if there was some super tonic in the castle, which soon made them look like girls of the same age, level, and every appearance is as beautiful as a flower. They are getting plumper day by day, as if there is some super tonic in the castle, which will soon make them reach the level of girls of the same age, and every appearance is as beautiful as a flower. They are getting plumper day by day, as if there is some super tonic in the castle, which will soon make them reach the level of girls of the same age, and every appearance is as beautiful as a flower. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2628. No one believes that Edissa can really practice cultivation, but this little girl is really smart. As for the other boys and girls in the castle, the villagers don't know much about other people. After all, those young people live in seclusion all day long. Ask Edissa, this little girl is either naive, or she is hiding something, in short she knows nothing, or she is just talking like a child. She said that her brother once destroyed the planet and beat it to pieces. Who believes it? That's just what children say. If Edissa knew this, she would probably be furious. To be honest, she has no life at all. Her friends in this village probably don't trust her too much. Of course, Edissa didn't know about this. Continue, that's good, Zia, your sword is getting more and more sensitive. No, compared to you, Xylan, you are still a lot worse. Huh? What did you call me? At the castle where the villagers were very concerned, a large number of girls were sweating profusely. Among these girls, Jiolin is like a majestic teacher, supervising the training of these girls. Jiolin's face turned serious when she heard the girl who was originally skinny but now became a beautiful young beauty call herself Xiaolin. Yes, Teacher Jiolin, teacher, I feel like my sword is never good, please teach me. Xia is the most stubborn girl. After being appointed as the leader of all the girls by Jia Yan, she really showed her talent in cultivation. That's why Jiolin stared at her the most, and asked Xia to make further progress in swordsmanship or cultivation every day. But no matter how these girls progressed, Jiolin would not be satisfied. As for Edissa, after watching their studies in the first few days, she lost interest and went to the village to find others to play with. As for Jia Yan himself, these girls don't even know what he does on a daily basis. If it were another boy, he would be surrounded by so many warblers and sparrows every day, and he was still skinny and malnourished at first, but soon changed his appearance, and each of them became a beautiful girl. He must be eager to be quiet in the gentle countryside. Right. But it was good for Jia Yan. After initially arranging for them, he asked Jiolin to be responsible for teaching, and he disappeared every day. By the way, Xiaolin, no. Master Lin, Master Yan, it seems that I haven't seen him in recent days. Xia looked at the castle not far away and almost couldn't speak when she mentioned Jia Yan's name. To Jiolin, she dared to call him by his name, but to Jia Yan, she didn't dare to do the same at all. Even mentioning his name made her feel frightened. After all, Jia Yan is too mysterious, so mysterious that he doesn't look like Jiolin's biological brother. My brother, I don't know. He may have gone somewhere to do some work. Don't worry, he will be fine. Oh, your brother is really awesome. It looks like he is staying with us permanently, but he might actually be running around on the planet, right? He can teleport. Xia was a little distracted. She discovers that she has a slight crush on the mysterious and powerful Lord Iwa. Or should I say, there is no girl here who doesn't like Mr. Yan. Even in this small mountain village, the girls and young women who have met Mr. Jia Yan all have a favorable impression of Mr. Jia Yan, and there are countless girls who have become his fans. He looks young on the outside, but mature and stable on the inside, and has a strong aura that makes girls scream. No girl can stand up to such a person. Yeah, my brother is very powerful. Where we come from, my brother is the strongest in the world. Unlike them, Jiolin doesn't have any romantic feelings for Jia Yan. Because they are brother and sister, they grew up together, so at best they have some admiration for him. She was so proud that Xia curled her lips, feeling that it was a bit boring to talk to a 12 or 13-year-old girl. She forgot that she was only 16 years old. Because for convenience or other reasons, in this world, the time on each planet is similar, and the age is not much different. So everyone looks like they are all the same age. Except for the youngest Adisha, who is in single digits, the rest are all in their teens. Oh, there are two 20-year-olds, but that's about it. You said that you are from other planets, right? Is it normal for you to believe in black gods? Anyone here who dares to say that he believes in black gods will be arrested. Like us, we are just the descendants of those who believe in black gods. I will be a servant of the temple forever, and my life and death will be controlled by them. When Xia heard the planet mentioned by Jialin again, she couldn't help showing her longing for it. They have chased Jialin more than once to listen to stories. They know that there are also many countries on that planet, and there are also those who believe in black and those who believe in white. There are even many countries that believe in black and white, and they can live in peace. This is unimaginable to them. Matter. They were wondering if they could live a peaceful life if they and others went to that planet. You are so pitiful. Such things rarely happen on our planet. At least no one dares to do it blatantly, not even those who believe in the white god section. Jialin looked at Xia and the others pitifully. It seems that a month or two have passed, but she still often sees some girls crying in the room, and nightmares are common. Xiaolin, I want to ask. Xia suddenly started to squirm. The words were stuck in his mouth, not daring to ask. Jialin was amused by her. If you have anything to ask, just ask. If I don't want to answer, or can't answer, I won't say anything. Why are you so coy? Well, are you using the power of the black god? Jialin was speechless for a moment. You know, on this planet, the use of black energy is the biggest taboo. Even if they had used it in the last battle, they had deterred the enemies at that time. Now that they are camping in this area, I don't want to use black energy, or even reveal it to others. But now, Xia asked. Do you want to answer? Jialin thought for a while, then recalled it, and realized that in her memory, Jia Yan did not ask her to hide the matter. It was just her own subconscious behavior that she did not tell Atissa. Since I have become good friends with Xia and the others, I shouldn't hide this. So, Jialin nodded, that's right, Sister Xia. In fact, my brother, and Edisha are all cultivating black power, and it seems to be quite orthodox black power. To say it is very orthodox is Jialin's own opinion. Of course, she was right. If it weren't for the orthodox black power, in the previous wars on the planet, the warriors of the Xinhe kingdom would not have often crushed enemies of the same level. It is precisely because he is strong enough that the Xinhe kingdom will rise, and because of the terror of black power, she, Jialin, has gained a good reputation, saying that she has not lost the face of Marshal Yan. Xiaolin. Please help me plead with Master Yan. I also want to cultivate your power. Xia got the answer she wanted and quickly knelt down. This was the first time she had knelt down in public after becoming an ordinary person. The action she thought she would get used to had actually become extremely awkward because she hadn't done it for a month or two, and she even felt ashamed. Many girls around him also cast surprised glances, and then turned away with unnatural expressions. They didn't want to see such a scene. In the past, everyone could only watch each other kneeling on the ground, but now, they felt that they would not do such a thing unless they died. Ah, Sister Xia, please get up quickly and I'll ask my brother for you. By the way, it seems that my brother was planning to teach you this kind of power. Jialin was startled and quickly helped Xia. Ah, are you going to teach us? Kneeling is in vain. In order to resolve the embarrassment, Xia stood up with a smile on her face. Judging from the slight trembling on her body and the blush on her neck, this move still consumed a lot of courage on her part. It's okay. Don't worry. I should have taught you how to use energy in the past 2 days. My brother said that in less than half a year, you will become very good warriors. But our plan has already been implemented. I hope you guys catch up. Jialin smiled. Plan. Yes, plan, otherwise what would we do on this planet? Before Jialin followed Jia Yan to this planet, she knew what Jia Yan was doing on this planet. They came to this planet for business. That's all about being impressed and gathering energy. It seemed like an ambitious plan, but to Jialin's ears, it didn't sound surprising. Because my brother Jia Yan has miraculously done it once. Moreover, their group this time is stronger than during the rise of the Xinhe kingdom. Not to mention Jialin herself, Jia Yan himself is probably even more powerful than back then. Even little Edisha, I'm afraid he is also a big shot at the level of a venerable. With such fighting power, if he doesn't capture this planet, is he really here to enjoy the mountains and rivers? The girls don't know why, but they always feel that the 16, 13, and 5-year-olds from aliens are really extraordinary. The so-called plan may also be a big event. Could it be? Do they still want to establish a force on this planet? I hope that a force of believers in black gods can be established that is strong enough to resist other forces on this planet. Otherwise, there are still a large number of believers in black gods on this planet, and their descendants will never be able to stand up again. These girls have an extremely strong sense of trust and admiration for Jia Yan. This is what the girls living in the castle are doing at this time. And what about Jia Yan himself? At this moment, he was indeed not in the castle at all, just as Jialin and the others had guessed. This young gentleman, you are really generous. You are even willing to buy such a group of old, weak, sick, and disabled slaves who believe in black people. Far away on the other side of the planet, a tragic incident is taking place. That is the gathering of black believers. In this conference, a large number of people were spectators, and there were very few real buyers. Those who can participate in it are all prominent figures. However, among this group of prominent figures, there is a young man who is familiar to everyone. But no one dared to underestimate this young man. Anyone who knows will be surprised by the young man's methods. Half a month ago, the young man appeared in the city, and then he spent a lot of money, and his ability was extremely outstanding, and he quickly mastered several key industries. Afterwards, he began to attack the city and plunder territory, and in his commercial methods, many wealthy people in the city suffered from him. You know, this only happened in half a month. Today, it is the first time for many wealthy people to see their true colors. I didn't expect such a young boy. What you think is useless may not be so to me. Jia Yan sat calmly on his seat and spoke indifferently to the waiter next to him who came to deliver the slave contract certificate. On the stage, there were several men, women, and children, but compared with ordinary people, they were dressed in rags, looked haggard, and their eyes were full of insensitivity. Let's do this. There's no need to auction the following ones. I'll take care of all these black believer slaves and send them to the hotel I bought. Jia Yan waved his hand. Etc. There are still a few hundred words left. Everyone is welcome to subscribe to the official version and read it. Just refresh the original version in half an hour. In this conference, a large number of people were spectators watching the excitement, and there were very few real buyers. Those who can participate in it are all prominent figures. However, among this group of prominent figures, there was a young man who was familiar to everyone. But no one dared to underestimate this young man. Anyone who knows will be surprised by the young man's methods. Half a month ago, the young man appeared in the city, and then he spent a lot of money, and his ability was extremely outstanding, and he quickly mastered several key industries. Afterwards, he began to attack the city and plunder territory, and in his commercial methods, many wealthy people in the city suffered from him. You know, this only happened in half a month. Today, it is the first time for many wealthy people to see their true colors. I didn't expect such a young boy. What you think is useless may not be so to me. Jia Yan sat calmly on his seat and spoke indifferently to the waiter next to him who came to deliver the slave contract certificate. On the stage, there were several men, women, and children, but compared with ordinary people, they were dressed in rags, looked haggard, and their eyes were full of insensitivity. Let's do this. There's no need to auction the following ones. I'll take care of all these black believer slaves and send them to the hotel I bought. Jia Yan waved his hand. Etc. There are still a few hundred words left. Everyone is welcome to subscribe to the official version and read it. Just refresh the original version in half an hour. I didn't expect such a young boy. What you think is useless may not be so to me. Jia Yan sat calmly on his seat and spoke indifferently to the waiter next to him who came to deliver the slave contract certificate. On the stage, there were several men, women, and children, but compared with ordinary people, they were dressed in rags, looked haggard, and their eyes were full of insensitivity. Let's do this. There's no need to auction the following ones. I'll take care of all these black believer slaves and send them to the hotel I bought. Jia Yan waved his hand. Etc. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2629. Facing the so-called Huang man's questioning. Jia Yan raised a finger calmly. The man surnamed Huang saw this finger from a distance and was slightly startled, then he started to laugh and cry. How much should I say? 1,000 Zinbei yuan. This price is naturally high in previous auctions, but this time, I will increase the price per capita to 1,100 Zinbei yuan. Boy, do you accept it or not? He grinned evilly. The Huang family is a wealthy owner in this auction. And they had some friction with Jia Yan. At least they lost a lot of money last time in the competition for the city's tea business. Now he was sparing no effort to compete with Jia Yan for these servants. No, Jia Yan smiled and shook his head. What I give is 10,000 Zinbei yuan per capita. What? The person from the Huang family jumped up from the chair. I don't believe it. You gave me 10,000 Zinbei yuan? Just for such a slave-like existence. Normally they are not worth even 1,000 Zinbei yuan. If you have the ability, take out the money. Not only him, but also a large number of nearby auctioneers' expressions changed slightly. If the average person believes in buy yuan for 1,000 yuan, they are still willing to believe it, but when it comes to 10,000 yuan, it is equivalent to a sky-high price. No one believed that Jia Yan, a young man with superb skills who suddenly appeared, would do such a loss-making business. Jia Yan shook his head and grabbed it casually. It was like a crack opened in the air, and a crack appeared, allowing him to grab a large bag of money from inside. Crash! A large number of gold coins rolled out of it. I took out the money, do you believe me now? Jia Yan looked at the people around him with a stern expression. Under the money offensive, these people's eyes were straightened. But this money seems to be a bit too much. It is enough to buy this auction house. I have to put some away. Jia Yan pointed with his fingers under the dull eyes of everyone, and a large number of gold coins rolled back into the bag. There's about the same amount left at your feet. When the money bag was about to return to the cracked space, the man named Huang rolled his eyes and suddenly roared. Okay. Jia Yan. My Huang family lost a lot of gold coins a few days ago. Is it you who stole it? I didn't expect that you, a foreign kid, turned out to be a gangster. Give me back my gold coins. This man from the Huang family had eyes full of selfish desires. The two Huang family guards behind him took action at the same time. For businessmen, it is normal to be jealous when there are huge interests at hand, but another reason why the man named Huang dares to take action is that he has extremely strong force value at the moment. He personally has a high-level combat power of the heaven level, and the combat power of the two guards under him are also at the heaven level. In such a battle, the masters of the first level of Starry Sky will probably retreat. Jia Yan is just a child, alone. Even if there is some force behind him, if he is killed now to seize the money, there will be no trouble. As for Jia Yan's ability to retrieve objects from the air, it's nothing, just magic. The man surnamed Huang knows many magicians who can retrieve objects from the air. Oh? Yours. Haha. Under the arrest of the three masters, Jia Yan still sat in his seat with an indifferent expression, but there was a touch of teasing and disdain in his eyes. Buzz. When the man surnamed Huang and his subordinates rushed in front of Jia Yan and stretched out their hands to grab the money bag beside Jia Yan, the three of them felt their whole bodies tighten. All their charging speed was frozen. The impact was so violent that their bones made violent noises, presumably because their bones were dislocated. Even so, they were still controlled by the terrifying power, and they were completely frozen in mid-air. A stupid person would risk his life for money. Ho, ho, this, I don't believe it. The man surnamed Huang was like a fish falling into the water, frozen in mid-air and flopping, but the more he struggled, the more he became unable to survive. The air around his body seemed to have been sucked out, making it difficult to breathe. The three of them struggled desperately in mid-air, but their inability to do anything made everyone around them feel chills. This is the result of provoking Jia Yan. In fact, they had known for a long time that there was a terrifying force behind a young man named Xia. But I never expected that this terrifying power was actually the young man himself. Mr. Xia, look, Mr. Huang is almost out of breath. For the sake of our auction house, please let him go. Otherwise, if someone dies on our side, our auction house's reputation will be bad. The man in charge of the auction house jumped off the auction stage and begged Jia Yan again and again. As a local businessman, the auction house naturally has contacts with the Huang family. As a coalition of local businessmen, it is natural to intercede on his behalf. Of course, asking for mercy is one thing, but whether Jia Yan agrees is another. Oh? Wouldn't it be bad for your auction house's reputation to die here? Then. Jia Yan smiled sternly, then waved his arms. The man surnamed Huang and his two guards flew out of the window of the auction house. Then outside the window, the man surnamed Huang could no longer endure the torment without air. His eyes turned white, his whole body twitched a few times, and then became silent again. His two guards managed to hold on for a while, but within 20 seconds, they followed in their master's footsteps. Is this, dead? People from the Huang family died like this. After Jia Yan finished all this, it was as if he had swatted 3 little flies to death. He continued to look back and looked calmly at the man from the auction house standing in front of him. How about, now that people are dying outside, it won't affect the reputation of your auction house, right? Hurry up and continue the auction. If something happens to the people I scheduled, I will pay for the debt with their lives. Ah. Okay. Okay, let's start now, Mr. Jia, wait a moment. The man in the auction house trembled all over, nodded vigorously, and trotted back to the high platform. The 3 Huang family members who fell dead outside the window slowly fell into the corner of the street. Screams and screams were immediately heard, but no one ran out to watch upstairs in the auction house. Because they were all frightened and kept silent, Jia Yan didn't say anything and no one dared to move. He didn't even dare to breathe hard, for fear that he would be the next person to die in such a miserable way. In this world, like the galaxy outside, fists are still the greatest truth. Jia Yan showed that in addition to financial resources, his fists were equally powerful, and no one dared to bully him anymore. After the death of Lian Wang's family, some high-level officials in the city knew about it and quickly restrained the police team that was preparing to dispatch. They must take a good look at the power behind this young man, otherwise they will be the ones who rashly influence a powerful young man and be the ones to take advantage of him. Under such a tense mood, The auction house continued the auction. As long as there is a slave who is a descendant of a black believer on stage, he will be automatically taken to Jiayan. Not long after, there were more than 20 voices beside Jiayan. Mr. Jiayan, sir, here are all the slaves of the descendants of the black believers in my auction house this time. Are you satisfied? Jiayan looked behind him calmly. There were men, women, and children. Most of them were old, weak, sick, and disabled, because valuable young, strong, or beautiful women had already been appointed. Okay, I don't want anything else. Can I leave with people now? Okay, Mr. Jia, do it yourself. Oh no, I'll send you away. You don't need to send me off in person. I know the way myself. Goodbye. Jia Yan stood up, and a row of descendants of those who believed in black followed mechanically behind Jia Yan. They have long been accustomed to being slaves under years of training and oppression. Even if they are sold, they will not have the slightest idea of escape or rebellion. What's more, the Jia Yan just now dares to kill even the big families in the city, and he has the ability to kill them. They, the descendants of black believers who usually kneel on their knees, are at best weaklings with no strength in front of such people. Dare to have the slightest thought of resistance. After leading the crowd downstairs, they saw people from the Huang family gathering downstairs. They suddenly turned their hateful gazes to Jia Yan, and those eyes that wanted to devour others frightened the group of believers behind Jia Yan, trembling, and some people urinated on the spot. The stench swept through the streets. The crowds around also quietly stayed away, and even the doors and windows of the auction house were closed. A big war may break out next. Who dares to get close? Walk. Jia Yan, on the other hand, smiled jokingly and approached the Huang family in a swaggering manner. On the Huang family's side, there were several people collecting the bodies, and there were more than 30 people with weapons and equipment in their hands, who obviously wanted to recover the place. But they didn't expect that the pressure would be so great when facing the rumored strange young man. There was a man from the Huang family who was the father of the deceased Huang family's heir. When Jia Yan passed by him, his fingers clenched and unclenched, and his knuckles turned white. But finally, after Jia Yan passed by him and even touched his shoulder lightly, he sighed miserably, and he was automatically knocked to the side of the road by Jia Yan. He stumbled, tears rolled down from his eyes, but he did not dare to make a move. Dare to take action against our family. There was the Huang family behind him, and he couldn't help but think that Jia Yan was using force when he hit the head of the Huang family, and was about to strike him down with his sword. Stop. This is a misunderstanding. Let Jia Xiao leave. The head of the Huang family, whose son had died, roared, his eyes red. The Huang family member who was chopping the knife was shocked and quickly put away the knife. Jia Yan turned around, looked at the head of the Huang family who was avoiding him, nodded and said, "You are a smart man, and I like smart people. I will forget about this matter. Thank you, Mr. Jia." The owner of the Huang family, who was in tears, sighed and clasped his fists. Jia Yan smiled and raised his hands, leading the ignorant slaves of the descendants of the Xinhe behind him to pass through a large number of Huang family horses and leave the street. "Master! What are you doing?" After Jia Yan left, the crowd on the street was boiling. The Huang family, a big and dignified merchant family, did not dare to fight back when the son of the family leader was killed, allowing the enemy to swagger in his face. "What do you know, what do you know, he, if we had dared to take action just now, I'm afraid our entire Huang family would disappear today. Do you think I don't want revenge? That's my son, but... The head of the Huang family is a man who has the ability to discern people, even if Jia Yan did not expect to show any surprising methods in front of him. But he judged from his demeanor just now that Jia Yan was definitely not someone his family could deal with. If he really took action just now, he was sure that it would not be Jia Yan who perished, but all the Huang family members present. Even after that, the entire Huang family would be dug up 3 feet in the city and directly encounter Jia Yan's elimination. He didn't dare. From now on, don't provoke this Jia Yan, he is not someone we can afford. This is. Everyone in the Huang family was extremely aggrieved, but they had no choice but to accept the order of the family leader. As Jia Yan walked through the streets, he even found a large group of police officers disguised as ordinary people on the side of the road. But although they were eager to give it a try, they stopped after seeing the performance of the Huang family. The head of the Huang family is a person with an extremely keen sense of smell. Even he dare not touch people, which shows that there is definitely something extraordinary about this kid. In a society where the strong prevail, sometimes the status quo is so unbearable. Even the police and even high-level government officials do not dare to offend powerful forces or people who are protected by powerful people, otherwise they are seeking death. The strong one controls everything. What's more, the method Jia Yan just showed represents that he himself may not be able to win it casually. Okay, you come with me to the hotel. This is a place I just bought not long ago. You can find the room by yourself. Jia Yan led all the servants of the black descendants to the door of the hotel he bought in the city, and then asked the dumbfounded waiter in the hotel to guide everyone to the room. A large crowd gathered at the door, pointing and pointing. No one knows why Jia Yan is so kind to a group of descendants who believe in black people who are inferior to pigs and dogs. A few hundred words are missing. You will be able to see all the chapters when the official version is refreshed. Please come and subscribe to the official version. 1 chapter does not cost much, master. What are you doing? After Jia Yan left, the crowd on the street was boiling. The Huang family, a big and dignified merchant family, even the owner's son was killed, so they didn't dare to fight back and allowed their enemies to swagger in their faces. What do you know? What do you know? He, if we had dared to take action just now, I'm afraid our entire Huang family would disappear today. Do you think I don't want revenge? That's my son, but. The head of the Huang family is a man who has the ability to discern people, even if Jia Yan didn't expect to show any surprising methods in front of him. But he judged from his demeanor just now that Jia Yan was definitely not someone his family could deal with. If he really took action just now, he was sure that it would not be Jia Yan who perished, but all the Huang family members present. Even after that, the entire Huang family would be dug up 3 feet in the city and directly encounter Jia Yan's elimination. He didn't dare. From now on, don't provoke this Jia Yan, he is not someone we can afford. This is. Everyone in the Huang family was extremely aggrieved, but they had no choice but to accept the order of the family leader. If you like Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito, please collect it. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito hand game is updated the fastest. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2630. Okay, I just came back from doing work outside, and I'm very tired now, so please don't disturb me. Jia Yan waved his hand and told the 2 goblins to stay away. Brother, where have you been playing? I want to play too. Jia Lin and Edisha had been staying in the castle for more than a month and were already tired of it. After hearing this, they quickly stopped Jia Yan. They ignored Jia Yan's word doing things and emphasized that it was playing, which made Jia Yan's usually calm face appear stunned. These 2 little brats are getting more and more arrogant. I said, I am here to do business, serious business, not just for fun as you think. If I can take you to play in the future, I will do so. Now go back and practice well, do you understand? Okay, let's practice. Jia Lin and Edisha already knew about Jia Yan's temper. Seeing Jia Yan's face darken, she knew that what she just said made her brother really unhappy, so she nodded and left obediently. I guess they have some good eyesight. Jia Yan was about to enter his room helplessly. but he found another girl blocking her body at the door of the room. "Zia, what are you doing at the door of my room?" Jia Yan asked. Lord Jia Yan. When Zia saw Jia Yan, she bit her lower lip and wanted to kneel down. "Wait, you have heard what I said. If you do it in front of me, I can only ask you to leave the castle." Jia Yan stretched out his palm to stop her behavior. Xia immediately stopped moving as if she had been severely bitten. "Master Jia Yan, I want to learn stronger combat abilities, and I want to take on more." Xia expressed her ambition. It turned out that she had discovered that she and others were becoming stronger and stronger with the help of Jialin and Edisha. But the gap between Jialin and Edisha is getting wider and wider. In other words, no matter how hard they try, it is impossible to catch up with these two little girls, let alone Jia Yan, a terrifying and powerful man whose strength is a mystery. "You want to learn more combat abilities? Do you know what you are talking about?" Jia Yan frowned. For him, on this planet, at most, he can only cultivate some ordinary subordinates who are worth cultivating. No matter how strong they are not much stronger, especially these girls who are originally like slaves. They are pitiful, but they are not at all strong. Bones and the like have long since become negative due to years of malnutrition and lack of exercise. The cost of training is too high and it is of little significance at all. Jia Yan would not waste his energy. It would be too tiring to perform menstrual cleansing and marrow manipulation on them like Jia Lin did. "Please do it, sir. After helping the princess get revenge, I will use my life to repay you." Zia held her fists in her hands, her eyes speaking with certainty. "No need, your reward means nothing to me." Jia Yan waved his hand and was about to enter the room. Xia suddenly rushed forward and wanted to hug Jia Yan's body tightly. If it were someone else, she might have fallen victim to this trick. Jia Yan knew that this girl might want to exchange her body for something. But who is Jia Yan? A good man who is loyal to his wife, even before his wife, has turned away countless females or beauties, treating him as a bad woman who covets his body. His eyes flashed. "So this Xia is also a womanizer? You want to eat shit?" Puff. There was a flash of power, and Xia was blown away while screaming. Fortunately, he was not injured. "Xia, I can save you, but I can also destroy you easily. Don't take yourself too seriously. Besides, not everyone will recognize the sacrifice you think you made." Jia Yan's calm tone stayed in her ears before closing the door. The girl's face turned red, but she could only helplessly watch the door being closed. Awkward. She also thought that she would be favored by Mr. Jia Yan because she had gradually regained her appearance as a beautiful woman recently. "That's right, how can I catch the attention of an adult with my humble appearance?" She stood up with a wry smile. Then he clenched his knuckles and walked to the training ground. She swore that even if she didn't get help from Master Jia Yan, she would work hard to reach the highest level she could reach. Well, Jia Yan was in the room and felt Xia leaving. Sure enough, being too handsome is a problem. Who made me so handsome? Okay. Jia Yan was still a little happy. They have this kind of heart, which every man has. If he just thinks this way in his heart, whether he will turn his inner thoughts into actions is another matter. Maybe he would think like Jia Yan had shown in the past, but deep down he would always be that cold-blooded mosquito. On the contrary, I have been to many cities on this planet. Jia Yan quickly turned his thoughts from the love between his children and back to the matters he was facing now. In that city on the other half of the planet, because there were loopholes to exploit, I used my expertise there and developed a force. I will be of great use to the descendants of those who believe in evil. The descendants of the group of believers in the auction left behind by Jia Yan were naturally not just kind-hearted. He has a purpose. In general, this planet is just like what we saw when we first arrived. Almost every aspect is controlled by the Baishan cult. Under this, each country is only slightly different. Even the appointment of the top level of the country requires belief in the consent and authorization of the Baishan religion, otherwise it will be impossible to execute it. Only 2 countries are different. Jia Yan pointed out the small screen computer in his hand. He was used to the outside world's smart brains and huge holographic screens, but when he came to this world and could only use a small screen, he was a little uncomfortable. But you can still use it if you are not used to it. Opening the map software, Jia Yan looked at the country on the other half of the planet that he had visited before. In fact, it can be felt in the past that that country is very similar to ancient China on Earth, and many of the cultivators there are so-called cultivationists. The power cultivated by cultivators is more or less the same as black energy. It has something to do with it, so this country and the Xinbatian sect in the Xintian star are seemingly inseparable from each other. Another country is adjacent to it. The 2 sides were originally one country, but after the White God cult took control of the planet, they deliberately used force to force the 2 countries to separate, and also arranged territorial conflicts, racial conflicts, etc. As a result, the 2 countries have been fighting for internal friction. Jia Yan was very curious about what these 2 countries were capable of, so that the Xinbatian sect, which had the authority to dominate the world, failed to destroy the 2 countries. Instead, they chose to cut each other off. After that, it seems that they have not been able to remove the tentacles. The 2 countries are completely in control. A cultivator. Jia Yan thought for a while, and it seemed that this was the only explanation. It can be seen from the previous planet that part of the power of a cultivator's cultivation is his black energy, but most of it is also mixed with a little bit of White God's power, as well as several other varieties of strange power. Then the combat effectiveness will be explosive and terrifying. What Jia Yan is curious about is that it's just the last planet. The cultivators are strong because the planet's strong level is not too strong. But this planet is definitely inhabited by venerable beings. Why do those 2 countries still exist? Aren't they uncomfortable when 2 disobedient nails are driven into the planet controlled by the Baishan sect? Even if it costs a little, it must be eliminated. In other words, are there experts in these 2 countries? That's not right. If there are experts, why don't we have a fight? Jia Yan couldn't understand. Of course, existence is reasonable. Since there are 2 countries that allow him to be careful, he must try his best to find ways to use his hands and feet. A cultivator? Haha, speaking of it, I asked Edisha to insert herself into the system. It's very interesting to look at it now. Jia Yan asked Edisha to lay out various chess pieces in the world, and the cultivator system was one of them. And he decided that if a cultivator wants to practice to the extreme, his black god power is indispensable. As a result, the cultivator system is destined to be impossible to integrate into the main system of this world. In fact, this is also true. Because cultivators are integrated with black power, in most Xinbei systems, they are like rats crossing the street. But thanks to the power of the cultivator system, they are like nails, firmly nailed to every corner of the world, and cannot be eradicated. There are not many things that Jia Yan is interested in, at least in this world, but he is really interested in the cultivator system in this world. If you can have this system in your hands, it might be a great help. The second day. Sister Xia, why are you still practicing? Your body will not be able to bear it? It's okay. I feel like my body is far from reaching its limit. Xia's unique performance surprised all the girls. Even Jialin is worried. As an Earth-level and close to Heaven-level master, she listened to Xia's training all night and was worried about whether there would be any problems with her body, so she secretly came to observe her early in the morning. Why, Xia's talent is not as good as ours, oops. Jialin said in a Versailles-like voice. Jialin, Atissa is not on the same level as you. Don't bring Atissa with you. Adisha didn't run out to make friends with anyone today. She jumped up and down behind Jialin. Go ahead and let me tell you, I just didn't practice hard, otherwise I would have caught up with you very quickly. Jialin rolled her eyes angrily. Wow, Jialin, you don't really think so, do you? Then you will be as desperate as Zia. Adisha was shocked. Jialin has been with them for a long time, can't she even see this? There is a huge gap between myself, Adisha, and her talent, okay. As for an ordinary girl like Xia, there is a huge gap between her and Jialin. To put it bluntly, the gap between Adisha and Jialin is much larger than the talent gap between Xia and Jialin. Forget it, telling the truth is too hurtful. Adisha has learned this. Don't worry, Adisha won't hurt your heart. Adisha thought she was gentle and flew up, patting Jialin on the shoulder. It felt like filming a second-class disabled person, which made Jialin endure it very hard and almost went into a rage. She didn't believe it. Her talent was pretty good, so how could it be so much worse than Adisha's? This is what is called having too much self-confidence. If Jialin could really understand it, I'm afraid her despair would be much greater than that of Zia now. By the way, Adisha, tell her, if we teach her those black god power fighting skills that my brother taught us, will she become stronger? This, Adisha doesn't know either. Adisha is a practicing idiot. By the way, Adisha will tell you a secret. The talent gap between your brother and I is the same as the gap between you and me. It's big, he, it's so fun. Adisha said, covering her little mouth and laughing. Zia is far behind Jialin, Jialin is far behind herself, and she is far behind Master Jiayan. So much fun. Adisha didn't run out to make friends with anyone today. She jumped up and down behind Jialin. Go ahead and let me tell you, I just didn't practice hard, otherwise I would have caught up with you very quickly. Jialin rolled her eyes angrily. Wow, Jialin, you don't really think so, do you? Then you will be as desperate as Zia. Adisha was shocked. Jialin has been with them for a long time, can't she even see this? Adisha, and her talent. There is a completely different gap between heaven and earth, okay. As for an ordinary girl like Xia, there is a huge gap between her and Jialin. To put it bluntly, the gap between Adisha and Jialin is much larger than the talent gap between Xia and Jialin. Forget it, telling the truth is too hurtful. Adisha has learned this. Don't worry, Adisha won't hurt your heart. Adisha thought she was gentle and flew up, patting Jialin on the shoulder. It felt like filming a second-class disabled person, which made Jialin endure it very hard and almost went into a rage. She didn't believe it. Her talent was pretty good, so how could it be so much worse than Adisha's? This is what is called having too much self-confidence. If Jialin could really understand it, I'm afraid her despair would be much greater than that of Zia now. By the way, Adisha, tell her, if we teach her those black god power fighting skills that my brother taught us, will she become stronger? This, Adisha doesn't know either. Adisha is a practicing idiot. By the way, Adisha will tell you a secret. The talent gap between your brother and I is the same as the gap between you and me. It's big, he, it's so fun. Adisha said, covering her little mouth and laughing. Zia is far behind Jialin, Jialin is far behind herself, and she is far behind Master Jiayan. So much fun. This, Adisha doesn't know either. Adisha is a practicing idiot. By the way, Adisha will tell you a secret. The talent gap between your brother and I is the same as the gap between you and me. It's big, he, it's so fun. Adisha said, covering her little mouth and laughing. Zia is far behind Jialin, Jialin is far behind herself, and she is far behind Master Jiayan. So much fun.